In the beginning, there existed beings far beyond mortal comprehension, the outer gods. Since time immemorial, these divine entities had created countless universes. Known as the Absolutes, they were omnipotent, eternal beings who endlessly indulge in the act of creation, reveling in their pursuit of eternity. With each cycle of creation, new materials, laws, and souls came into existence. But over time, the Absolutes grew weary of their eternal routine. Boredom crept in until they discovered a new form of amusement: war. The Absolutes began orchestrating conflicts among their creations, watching as civilizations clashed and perished in endless battlefields. For these godlike beings, destruction became a form of entertainment. The suffering, the chaos, the death, it was all a spectacle meant to amuse them. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the Absolutes was slain, not by a rival, but by its own creations. This shocking event sent ripples across the realms. Other Absolutes from distant dimensions turned their gaze toward the world that had lost its master. The death of one of their own, brought about by lower beings, was unprecedented. Yet rather than mourn, the Absolutes fixated on a more pressing matter: the unclaimed power left behind. That immense power now lay dormant, awaiting the first worthy being to seize it. And so a new chapter began. The story shifts to a bustling high school classroom where Suho shares exciting news with his friends. He's just been accepted into Korea Art University. His friends stare at him in disbelief, their eyes wide. One of them groans, half-jokingly suggesting he should have retaken the exam instead. Suho simply laughs it off. At least now I'm finally free from this hell. But the moment is cut short when a voice calls out from behind, laced with mockery. Suho turns to see Lee Yunchul swaggering toward him with a smirk. Suho deliberately misnames him. "What is it this time?" he says dryly. Lee snaps, irritated. "I'm Lee Yunchul, not Kim Seong-chul. And thanks to you, my plan to take over the school is ruined." Suho smirks, unfazed. "Then I guess you should be thanking me. Now you can graduate without causing more trouble." Around them, the classroom atmosphere tightens. Students glance between the two. They've grown used to Lee starting fights. Graduation is just around the corner. Why was Lee stirring trouble now? More importantly, why was he bullying Suho, who tried to live a positive life after his parents went missing? But Lee didn't seem to care. Without warning, he lunged. Suho didn't flinch. Calm and quick, he struck back. A clean knee to the face that sent Lee stumbling. "Just make it to graduation quietly," Suho muttered under his breath. And then something strange happened. A glowing, unnatural energy began to flicker around his hand. Lee roared and threw a punch, not at Suho, but at the lockers behind him. The classroom fell silent. Everyone stared in shock. That wasn't just anger. Lee had obliterated the lockers with a single strike. Suho, now on the floor, looked up in disbelief. Lee stood above him, hands still glowing with that strange, otherworldly power. The world Suho thought he knew had just changed forever. 2 years had passed. Now a second-year college student, Suho still couldn't shake the memory of that strange day, the moment when his world first began to shift. While walking across campus, an announcement echoed over the loudspeakers. All classes in the main building are being moved to the side building. A gate has appeared, and hunters are inside performing a raid. For your safety, please stay away from the area. Nearby, a curious man asked one of the staff how long the hunters had been inside. The worker responded, "It's been over 8 hours. It's just a D-rank gate, so they should be wrapping it up soon." Suho continued on, but his heartbeat quickened. Another gate again. It had been 3 years since the world was shattered by the appearance of the mysterious gates, rifts that connected Earth to terrifying dungeons. For a brief time after a gate appeared, monsters would pour out, threatening the lives of countless people. In response, humanity began to change. Some individuals awakened to supernatural abilities in a phenomenon now known as awakening. The world had become chaotic, unstable, its future uncertain. But thanks to one man, Woo Jinchul, society found a fragile balance. He established the Hunter Association, an organization that gathered and managed the awakened. With an official structure in place, the chaos became manageable. Now humanity was split in two. the awakened, blessed with power beyond human limits, and the non-awakened, ordinary people who could only watch from the sidelines. In this new system, fate was cruel. Someone could suddenly receive immense strength, while others, no matter how hard they worked, remained powerless. Even the weakest awakened, an E rank, held more influence than a hard-working non-awakened. If hunters failed to stop the gates, the world would fall into ruin. Put simply, the non-awakened couldn't survive without the awakened. But the awakened, they didn't need the rest. That's why Suho felt a deep gratitude toward the hunters. Because of them, people like him, ordinary, non-awakened, could live in peace. And yet, somewhere inside, he felt uneasy. Was he simply growing used to losing things, used to living without parents, used to depending on others for survival? There was a time when Suho believed he could achieve anything, but when everything he had was taken away, all that remained was helplessness. His mother had once told him he resembled his father. How would his father have faced this kind of world? Lost in thought, Suho absent-mindedly sketched in his notebook. Passing by his art instructor Lim, stopped and smiled at the page. Suho looked up, replying casually, "My hand just seemed to be moving on its own." The professor leaned closer, amused. "Is that an ant? It's a pretty creative take." Suho glanced back at the drawing, puzzled. Why did I even draw this? He wondered. Meanwhile, at the gate, security personnel had gathered near the portal to greet the returning hunters. The atmosphere was calm, too calm, suggesting the subjugation had gone smoothly. A staff member stepped forward and thanked Hunter Kim Jong-soo for his service. Kim gave a brief nod as he reported, "The dungeon has been cleared." He went on to explain what they had encountered inside. A new type of beast. It had the form of a humanoid and spewed blue flames from both its eyes and mouth. It had attacked viciously with claws and fangs, though it wasn't particularly strong. Kim had been scratched during the fight, but since there were no after effects, he assumed it was only a minor threat. A staff member responded with surprise. "That kind of beast hasn't been recorded since the gates began appearing. Good thing it wasn't anything too dangerous." Then he added politely, "Mr. Kim, please write a brief report on the subjugation before leaving." But just as he turned to prepare the documentation, his body froze mid-motion. A concerned staffer called out. Without warning, Kim turned and struck down the staffer beside him with a single blow. Panic erupted. The nearby hunters backed away in shock. Horror dawned on their faces as they realized it was the curse. The blue flames from the dungeon had taken hold of him, and with a twisted expression, he began slaughtering everyone in his path. The crowd near the gate scattered, screaming in terror. Some tried to run, others didn't make it. The cursed hunter chased them down, tearing through the security staff and fellow hunters alike. In a distant classroom, the sudden noise jolted students from their lesson. They rushed to the windows, trying to understand the commotion outside. Suho looked up, heart pounding. Something wasn't right. He muttered under his breath, "People are attacking each other." At first, everyone assumed it was a dungeon break, but then they saw it. Civilians engulfed in eerie blue flames, their eyes glowing unnaturally. Then someone turned to their art instructor. "You're an awakened, right? Do something." But Instructor Lim shook his head grimly. "I'm just an E rank. I can't do anything." Just then, Suho spotted him, a hunter, blazing with blue flames, standing ominously outside. In the next instant, the cursed hunter leapt toward the classroom. Suho's instincts screamed at him. "Run!" he shouted. The hunter crashed through the glass. Shards rained down. Screams filled the room as chaos exploded. Suho bolted toward the door, yelling at his classmates to escape. Ahead of him, a girl had collapsed, her legs trembling, unable to move. "Please help me," she cried. Suho stopped, just for a moment. Then he ran. "I'll call the hunters," he thought, sprinting down the corridor. But even as he ran, guilt clawed at him. What am I doing? Calling a hunter now, it's practically the same as leaving her to die. But I'm not awakened. What else can I do? Eyes shut tight, Suho pushed through the panic. And then a memory surfaced. A dream, or maybe a vision. A strange one, like a game. He had fought monsters that grew stronger with every encounter. Each time he had to grow stronger too. again and again, until eventually he reached the final level. There he faced a powerful boss, an enemy of overwhelming strength. But oddly, it wasn't fear he felt. It was respect, because the final boss looked just like his father. Somehow the dream had projected his ideal of his father into that final enemy, a man strong, reliable, and unyielding. If Dad were here, what would he do? Snapping back to reality, Suho spotted a fire extinguisher. Without thinking, he grabbed it and charged straight at the cursed hunter who was about to strike the helpless girl. With all his strength, Suho slammed the extinguisher into the hunter's face. This is what Dad would have done, he thought. But then, reality struck him. What now? He knew non-awakened attacks couldn't harm demonic beasts. As panic threatened to overtake him, something strange happened. The monster froze. The classroom fell unnaturally silent. Even the terrified girl had stopped moving. Suho glanced around. Time itself had stopped. A glowing screen appeared before him. Secret quest, condition met. Courage of the powerless. You have earned the right to become a player. Suho's breath caught. This is just like that dream. In the middle of this desperate moment, one final chance. If he could become stronger, just like in the vision. Was there any reason not to accept? With resolve in his eyes, Suho chose to accept. A sudden burst of brilliant light engulfed the classroom. A notification appeared before Suho's eyes. Congratulations on becoming a player. A status window materialized. As Suho stared at it, realization dawned. Just as I thought. Before he could process it fully, another system message popped up. Quest notice. Defeat the mist. From the thick mist, figures began to stir, monsters rising from their slumber. Among them was a D-rank awakened mistburn. Seeing it, Suho told the girl next to him to run. As she fled the scene, Suho scanned the enemies more closely. 2 non-awakened civilians and 1 hunter, all transformed into savage beasts. The 2 non-awakened mistburns charged toward him with murderous intent. But Suho didn't run. If I've really awakened, he thought, then I have to fight. Suho grabbed a fire extinguisher and slammed it into the creature's face. He dropped the extinguisher and clenched his fist. With every ounce of focus and emotion, he drove a powerful punch into the monster's skull. The beast rocketed upward, smashing into the ceiling. Suho stood in stunned silence, barely able to believe what he'd just done. I took it down, in one hit. A system notification confirmed it. In that moment, another enemy charged at him. Suho met it head-on with a fierce kick, knocking it out cold. A new notification rang in. Tutorial quest completed. As he turned to face the final enemy, Suho smiled. So this is what it feels like to awaken. He struck the beast with a confident punch, but it didn't budge. Suho's eyes widened. The monster endured the blow. Then in a blur, the creature's claw slashed across Suho's chest. Blood spurted from the deep wound as Suho quickly widened the distance between them. Gasping for air, he glanced down at his bleeding chest. If I get hurt by this thing, will I turn into one of them? Just then, the system issued another message. Status removed due to the effect of the longevity skill. His injuries began to heal on their own. Suho stared in disbelief. He barely had time to process it when the monster attacked again, pinning him to the ground. Struggling beneath its weight, Suho desperately searched for a way out. Then he remembered. The system rewards. Quickly, he accepted the rewards from the earlier quest and allocated the stat points, focusing them into strength. A surge of new power coursed through him. With a roar, he broke free from the monster's grasp and lunged forward, unleashing a furious barrage of punches. The creature fought back, but Suho dodged and countered with precision. He continued pouring all his earned points into strength. So I really can get stronger, he thought. All this time, I believed a person's rank was fixed. With a single devastating punch, he sent the monster crashing into the wall. Before it could recover, he closed in and launched a relentless assault. Each strike thundered with force and fury. The monster no longer resisted. It could only endure the onslaught. Suho didn't stop. Breathing heavily, bruised and bloodied, he stood over the defeated creature's broken body. He had survived. A system message flashed before Suho's eyes. Exhausted, Suho dropped to his knees, panting heavily. But despite the pain, A look of triumph crossed his face. This was real. He was truly an awakened player now. For the first time, he felt the strength to save others and bring order to this chaos. But just as he tried to catch his breath, a new threat emerged. From the smoke and debris outside, a towering figure approached, dragging an enormous sword behind him. With an unnatural leap, the figure soared through the air. Peering through a shattered window, Suho tried to make sense of the source of the disturbance. But before he could react, another mistburn lunged at him. This one was no ordinary beast. It was a C-rank awakened mistburn wielding a sword. The creature slashed through the building, its massive blades shattering everything in its path. Meanwhile, across the city in South Korea, an emergency broadcast blared through the streets. Dungeon break at Korea National University of Arts. Evacuate immediately. At the campus perimeter, emergency forces had already gathered. More backup arrived, but the platoon leader was fuming with frustration. Why are we just sitting here while people are dying? When is the Hunter Association sending someone? A soldier responded calmly. They're still trying to locate a B-rank or higher-ranked hunter. The leader's face twisted in confusion. Wasn't this gate classified as D-rank? Why would we need a B-rank hunter? The soldier's tone grew grim. The situation changed. The association believes some of the hunters have been infected, including C-rank hunter Kim Jong-soo. Back inside the shattered building, Suho stared at the new monster. This one was different. It wasn't just strong, it was intelligent, and it had a weapon. He assessed the threat, a C-rank awakened mistburn, definitely not like the others. But Suho had leveled up just moments ago. Maybe he had a chance. Without warning, the monster attacked. Suho dodged instinctively, the room shaking from the force of the strike. His heart pounded. He kicked a nearby fire extinguisher toward the beast, hoping to blind it. The monster effortlessly sliced it in half, releasing a cloud of smoke. Using the cover, Suho bolted from the room. Maybe backup will arrive soon. Maybe I just have to survive until then. As the monster began to follow Suho, it spotted a group of terrified female students huddled together, trembling on the rooftop. With a feral leap, the monster jumped from the window, its blade raised. One brutal swing, blood painted the rooftop. Suho froze, his fists clenched, his rage ignited. No more running. There's no time to wait for the hunters. He charged. His foot connected with the monster's back, but it barely reacted. With a single swing, the creature split the floor in two. The shockwave nearly knocked Suho off his feet. He realized one thing. One clean hit from this thing, and I'll die. But he couldn't back down. He lunged in again, fists moving in a blur. Punch after punch. The mistburn retaliated, each swing savage and deadly. Suho dodged, weaved, countered. He slammed his knee into the monster's burning face, but the creature struck back, its blade slicing across Suho's chest. Blood exploded from the wound. Suho was thrown into the wall. His body ached, broken and bruised. His vision blurred. A system alert echoed in his mind. Suho coughed blood and rose to his feet, barely holding on. 1 HP, he murmured. Is the system refusing to let me fall? The air cracked. Suho braced for the final clash, ignoring the pain tearing through his body. Again the air cracked. The mistburn leapt toward him, blades screaming through the air. Suho's vision dimmed, and then he collapsed. The air cracked, and a dimensional rift tore open. From within the rip, a majestic figure emerged. The Ant King, Beru, had returned. Just as the mistburn charged toward Suho, Beru landed between them, shielding him. His hand hovered over Suho, a soft light flowing from his palm. Suho's wounds began to heal rapidly. Beru's voice was low and regretful. He muttered that it was his fault for arriving too late. Then Beru turned to face the monster. His aura erupted in waves of power, pressing down on everything around him. With one ruthless strike, Beru reduced the mistburn to shredded fragments. The creature was annihilated, but it wasn't over. Another mistburn crawled along the ceiling, stealthily aiming for a fleeing civilian. Beru didn't hesitate. He leapt with lethal grace, tearing through the creature without pause. Within seconds, all the invading monsters had been destroyed. Nothing left but limbs and blood-stained debris. Outside, the smoke began to clear, but just then, every glass window in the university shattered at once. A radiant, blinding light bathed the battlefield. Silence followed. Onlookers stood frozen, unsure if what they were seeing was real. Beru returned to Suho, his gaze softening. He whispered, "It's been a while, young monarch." Then stories shift to flashback of a younger Suho sat quietly in a room, sketching ants with incredible detail. His collection was impressive for a child. Then a shadow fell over him. Beru stood there holding a drawing of himself, one Suho had made. He teased the boy with polite praise, clearly touched by the moment. Tears welled up in Beru's eyes. Now back to the present. Suho awoke with a start, confused. He was lying in a hospital bed. Reality rushed back in. Later that day, Suho spoke with his uncle. His uncle demanded to know what had happened, asking if Suho was injured in the sudden disaster. He insisted that from now on, Suho should hire awakened bodyguards. The world was far too dangerous now to take risks. Suho reassured him he was fine, but he was more concerned with the time. He'd been unconscious for 2 whole days. The news played nonstop on TV. Reports flooded in about the Korea National University of Arts incident, which had left the country in shock. The disaster had caused numerous casualties and stirred national outrage. The most disturbing revelation: the appearance of mistburns, monsters that could infect hunters and turn them into demons. And despite the incident occurring in the heart of Seoul, the Hunter Association's response had been significantly delayed. Even after the belated arrival of backup, one question haunted everyone. Who or what killed all the mistburns inside the university? He turned off the television quietly. So it wasn't a dream. He really had awakened. Even more, he was now someone who could grow stronger with each level up. But there was one thing he still didn't understand. He had been seriously injured during the fight with the C-rank awakened mistburn. So how had he survived? A familiar voice echoed in his mind. "Because I took care of those pests," Beru replied confidently. Suho blinked in confusion. A moment later, Beru appeared before him. "It's been a while since I last greeted you, young monarch." Tears welled up in Beru's eyes as he looked at Suho. He was overwhelmed seeing how much the boy had grown. Memories began to resurface, fragmented pieces falling into place. Suho remembered now. Beru was one of the black, ant-like creatures who had stayed by his side when he was a child. Why did I forget him until now? Beru explained that he had crossed dimensions to meet Suho again. Suho asked why these black creatures had surrounded him in childhood. He had so many unanswered questions. More than anything, he was puzzled. "They were so much bigger in my memories," he said. Beru chuckled, explaining that his current small size was a side effect of consuming a massive amount of mana while crossing dimensions. In his true form, he was far more imposing. Suho checked the system window, which listed Beru as a private-grade companion. But Beru scoffed at that, cursing the system. "Martial grade," he corrected firmly. Suho thanked him for the rescue. Beru scratched his cheek bashfully. He didn't look it, but he was a skilled healer too. Then Beru revealed the real reason for his appearance: to break the seal that had been holding Suho's powers back. But to his surprise, the seal had already been broken by Suho himself. Beru nodded in approval, impressed by how far Suho had come. Curious and unsettled, Suho turned to Beru. He asked, his voice low with tension, if the mysterious seal placed on him had anything to do with the vivid dream he had experienced. Beru nodded solemnly. That vision hadn't been a dream at all. It was a memory. Everything Suho had seen and felt had truly happened. Beru explained further. His father, the legendary Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo, had sealed away both Suho's powers and his memories, a decision made to give his son a normal life. That revelation struck Suho like lightning. He stood in silence, trying to process it all. Then came the question that had haunted him since childhood. Was Beru somehow connected to his father, the man who had disappeared without a trace? Beru's stern expression softened as he answered. Jinwoo hadn't abandoned his son. He had left Earth entirely to fight a war in outer space. Confused, Suho pressed for more. Beru explained that the Shadow Monarch had gone to battle against a terrifying force, the Outer Gods. beings from beyond the known universe who sought to conquer and corrupt all of existence. These monstrous entities had begun sending apostles and beasts through dimensional rifts or gates in an attempt to invade Earth. To help Suho understand, Beru conjured shadowy projections. Images danced through the air. That warrior, Beru said, is your father. He's protecting this world from them. Suho's heartbeat quickened. The gates, the monsters, everything that had plagued Earth. It was all part of a larger cosmic war. Then Suho asked whether his mother had been with his father when they vanished, but Beru shook his head. He hadn't seen her. Suho revealed something troubling. His mother had disappeared the exact same day as his father. For years, he had assumed they'd left together. Beru froze, panic flickering across his face. If Suho's mother hadn't gone with Jinwoo, then it could only mean one thing. She might have been captured by the forces of the outer gods. That realization broke something inside Suho. His fists clenched. His jaw tightened. He swore he would no longer sit by and wait. If the outer gods were the reason his parents were gone, then he would tear down the heavens if he had to. He would bring them back. Beru nodded in agreement. If Suho wanted a chance, he would have to grow stronger, fast. Jinwoo might not return for some time, but Suho didn't have to wait. He could start now. As if on cue, the system responded to his resolve. Quest unlocked. Trial of the Shadow. You are the son of the great Shadow Monarch. To inherit his true power, you must prove yourself. Enter the dungeon and demonstrate your worth. A mysterious black key appeared before him, and the system instructed Suho to insert it into his own shadow. Without hesitation, he obeyed. The moment the key touched the darkness beneath his feet, a swirling portal opened on the wall nearby, its energy humming with power. Beru placed a steady hand on Suho's shoulder and gave a final nod of encouragement. Claim the power that rightfully belongs to you, young monarch. For a moment, Suho hesitated. Shadow monarchs, outer gods, cosmic wars. It was almost too much to believe. And yet, if this was his only chance to see his parents again, then he couldn't stop here. I need to level up. No matter what, he thought as he stepped forward. Behind him, Beru's thoughts wandered to the final command he had received from his king. Jinwoo had entrusted him with a mission. Go to Earth, release Suho's seal. The outer gods may already be reaching into our world. Return his power, his memories, and protect him. For the rest, act as you see fit. Watching Suho walk into the unknown, Beru whispered to himself, So you've left the rest in my hands, my king. Straightening his back, he declared aloud, I, Beru, shall remain at the young monarch's side. I will watch over his growth. Together the two stepped into the gate, and with a final flash of light, the portal vanished behind them, leaving behind only the silence of a world that had just witnessed the return of destiny. As Suho and Beru stepped through the gate, Beru began to explain their surroundings. This place was the land of the dead, a domain where no living being could set foot without the permission of its master. This was the Shadow Dungeon. Suho looked around, taking in the eerie landscape. Though called a dungeon, it felt more like a ruined city than a typical labyrinth. Strangely, the place felt familiar. Suddenly, a quest notification appeared before Suho. Survive for 4 hours? The denizens of the Shadow Dungeon will never accept a weak master. Survive and prove your worth. Curious, Suho asked Beru if he simply needed to survive here for 4 hours. Beru warned him to stay alert. The time of suffering was about to begin. As they talked, neither noticed the monsters silently closing in from above. Just as the warning came too late, a creature lunged, attempting to ambush Suho from behind. Reacting quickly, Suho delivered a clean kick to the monster's gut, enough to knock it off balance but not to finish it. His curiosity piqued. Beru explained that if a scout appeared this early, there were likely more nearby. Without hesitation, Suho dove in to kill the creature before it could signal reinforcements. Beru tried to warn him against rushing, but Suho was confident. The goblin scout didn't even have a colored name tag, marking it as weaker than himself. Suho struck fast, disarming the goblin and then crushing its skull with its own axe. Cold and efficient. After the kill, he turned to Beru and explained that the absence of a colored name meant it was a low-level threat. Once colored name tags started to appear, that's when the real danger would begin. As they spoke, a sound caught their attention. They looked around and saw another goblin scout signaling nearby comrades. Seeing this, Suho's resolve hardened. Now there was a whole swarm coming. One goblin even bore a colored name tag, clearly the strongest among them. Suho asked Beru for backup, but Beru shook his head. His mana was running low, and stepping in now would prevent Suho from gaining valuable combat experience. Frustrated, Suho muttered that Beru wasn't being very helpful. Goblins began to surround him. As the goblins charged, Suho activated a new skill, Ruler's Authority. The axe from the fallen goblin flew into his hand, and he began cleaving through the swarm with uncanny precision. His movements seemed guided by a hidden force, making his strikes almost supernatural. Suddenly, an arrow flew towards Suho. He caught it mid-flight. Archers were among the enemies. Without hesitation, Suho fashioned a makeshift bow and fired back, landing a perfect headshot on the goblin archer. Beru watched in awe, impressed by Suho's adaptability. In his mind, Beru reflected on the young monarch's childhood. Even then, Suho had been able to wield the ruler's authority, an inheritance from the original Shadow Monarch. But that power was designed for destruction, so it had been suppressed in this peaceful world. Now, with the apostles of the outer gods invading Earth, the young monarch's power was beginning to awaken and illuminate this dark reality. Suho continued fighting and climbing through the dungeon levels. Suddenly, a goblin sneaked up and stabbed him in the back. The creature smirked, but before it could celebrate, Suho landed a brutal punch. More goblins swarmed him, and a towering figure approached, the goblin centurion. Suho grabbed a dagger as the goblin charged. Determined, he threw the dagger like lightning, skewering goblins left and right, and finally piercing the boss's chest. The battle was chaotic, but Suho felt more alive than ever before. Though bleeding and weakened, he refused to back down. Grabbing a weapon, he lunged into the fray. Eventually, silence fell. The battlefield was littered with goblin corpses. Suho had survived the trial. 4 grueling hours in the Shadow Dungeon. Beru applauded, proud but not surprised by what the young monarch had accomplished. Then came the reward. Suho checked his system notifications and saw he had earned a runestone called Shadow Extraction. Beru was surprised. He hadn't expected the young monarch to acquire such a skill so soon. Feeling his new power coursing through his body, Suho admitted he felt like a total cheat with all the skills and levels granted by the system since his awakening. Beru explained that the system Suho had received was based on the same one the original Shadow Monarch had used in the past. It was designed as a support system to ensure Suho's safety and growth as the young monarch. Hearing this, Suho accepted the reward without hesitation. The system handed him a runestone called Shadow Extraction and notified him that he could absorb the skill by breaking the stone. Suho absorbed the runestone, and a new window appeared. Skill acquired, Shadow Extraction. No mana required. Creates shadow soldiers by using dead bodies. Success depends on the enemy's strength and the time since death. For the first time, Suho understood the true potential of his reward. He could create shadow soldiers. Beru elaborated, explaining that this power was the very foundation of the legacy built by the Shadow Monarch, Lord Sung Jinwoo. With it, Suho could convert corpses into shadow soldiers, beings much like Beru himself. However, Suho was skeptical. It sounded like a form of necromancy, and to command soldiers, he first had to hunt and kill them. So didn't that mean he could only control those weaker than himself? Suho also knew that summon-type skills weren't looked upon favorably in the hunter industry. Still, his curiosity won out. He tried the Shadow Extraction skill on a nearby goblin corpse. The system notified him that he needed to assign a command to activate the skill. Suho confirmed that the command should be direct, then calmly said, "Arise." Dark energy flowed through the corpse, and moments later 3 shadow goblins rose before him. Level 1, common grade shadow goblins. Suho observed them and remarked, "So this is the shadow skill." But he wasn't impressed. Beru explained that soldiers freshly extracted from their shadows tended to be weaker than they had been in life. Suho noticed the goblins were smaller than usual. The system also stated that they would disappear after 1 day. Beru asked if Suho had a skill like shadow storage to keep them longer. Suho shook his head. Seeing Beru's disappointment, saying it seemed shadow abilities were influenced by intelligence stats and levels, which meant this would become an incredible skill as he grew stronger. Cheered up, Suho suggested they leave the dungeon, especially since he'd been starving for 2 days. Beru reminded him they could exit any time by using the shadow dungeon key. They left the dungeon. Later, Suho found himself back in the hospital, sitting before a warm tray of food. His cheeks flushed with joy. He couldn't believe hospital food could taste this good. As Suho savored the meal, Beru stepped forward and explained their next task with solemn precision. They had been assigned 3 missions. First, they had to protect Earth from otherworldly beasts. Suho quickly realized what that meant. They needed to enter dungeons and hunt those monsters. Beru confirmed this and explained that as Suho hunted these beasts, his level would increase. As Suho grew stronger, Earth would become safer, just like the Shadow Monarch, Jinwoo, had once done. The second mission was to find the missing Lady Hein by any means necessary. Suho asked if there was any way to locate his mother. Beru answered that, if they kept hunting the beasts, they might eventually find a clue. The only way forward was to delve deeper into the dungeons. The third mission was especially important, to help Beru regain his full strength. Beru, no longer just a soldier, wanted to demonstrate his true power against the monarch. Suho questioned how he could regain his strength. Beru explained that he could absorb some of his target's magical power and knowledge by consumption. Although this method was inefficient compared to before he became a shadow soldier, it was the only option now since he couldn't receive magic power from Suho directly. Therefore, Beru would need to consume things imbued with magical power. Suho nodded in understanding. So basically, that means we need to keep going into dungeons, he concluded. After finishing his meal, Suho stood up. Beru added that to enter dungeons officially, Suho would need a hunter qualification. This meant going to the Hunter Association to have his magical power measured. Suho nodded thoughtfully. As someone who had awakened and was steadily growing stronger, he couldn't help but wonder, what rank would he receive? What if he got something like an S rank? At the association, a staff member measured Suho's magical power and announced that it was 46, making him an E rank awakener. Suho stepped outside the building, the weight of the results pressing down on him. His steps were slow and his thoughts grew darker. Beru gently explained that hunter ranks were primarily determined by magical power. It was natural for Suho's rank to be lower than his actual abilities since Suho had focused on developing other stats. Suho asked Beru if, with his shadow abilities in this rank, an E rank like him could really protect the Earth. Beru reminded him calmly that Suho possessed the level-up system as the young monarch. Suho recalled how difficult it was for E and F rank hunters. They were rarely recruited for expeditions, and even entering dungeons was often a problem. Suddenly, his eyes brightened as he shared an idea with Beru. Dungeon raids were organized with a strict division of labor. The assault team attacked the dungeon directly. The recovery team followed behind to collect carcasses of the beasts. The mining team extracted resources from the dungeon's rear. Among these groups, the recovery and mining teams, excluding the assault team, could be supported by E-rank hunters. In other words, even an E-rank hunter like him could enter a dungeon. That was how Suho found himself wiping sweat from his brow inside a dungeon. He turned to Lim Dokyun, his former instructor from the University of the Arts, and also an E-rank awakener. Suho thanked Lim for the opportunity, explaining that he had only recently awakened and was grateful to work in a dungeon like this. Lim wrestled with guilt. He apologized for what happened during the incident at the Korean University of Arts. He said he was scared and ran away during his awakening. He apologized again, feeling powerless. Sensing Lim's guilt, Suho reassured him gently. You're also an E-rank awakener. The Hunter Association advises E-rank hunters, like you and me, to flee with full power if we encounter dangerous beasts. Lim looked up in surprise. Wait, you're only E-rank? Suho nodded calmly. My magical power is 46. It's low even among E-ranks. Lim blinked, unable to believe it. He recalled seeing Suho fighting a beast on the rooftop while fleeing and wondered if he had misjudged him. Seeing that an E-rank hunter like Suho had survived by charging at a beast was even more impressive. At that moment, Beru appeared beside them, speaking proudly. The young monarch is exceptional. Lim turned and froze, his eyes locking onto Beru. Fear gripped him. He stumbled backward, eyes wide, shouting, "A monster!" Suho gave Beru an annoyed glance. "Why did you suddenly appear?" Beru remained calm as always. The monarch was as weak as a larva. "I need to stay close and protect him to ensure his safety." Lim stared in confusion. "Did you awaken as a summoner-type hunter?" Suho nodded in agreement. Lim chuckled nervously. "Well, you're lucky. Most E ranks don't get any skills." "I've got a running skill," Suho smirked. "That explains why you escaped so well back then." Lim's face darkened, but Suho quickly added with a grin, "I'm just joking." As Beru complimented Suho again, Suho looked around, thinking this was his first time inside a dungeon, besides the Shadow Dungeon. Looking ahead, he wondered if the assault team was hunting beasts up front. Deep within a dungeon, the assault team cut down the last of the beasts. One of the hunters let out a weary sigh and muttered that the dungeon felt unusually empty. Another nodded, noting that since earlier, only wolf-type beasts had been appearing. Wolf pelts didn't sell for much, making the effort feel hardly worth it. A third chimed in, pointing out that sometimes even low-tier beasts contain magic crystals, so they had to keep pressing forward regardless. The captain encouraged his team not to lose morale. They wouldn't know what truly lay at the end of the dungeon until they got there. Suddenly a shout came from behind. "Captain, there's something inside this side path." The captain stepped forward, eyes narrowing as he saw what lay ahead. Ancient, massive ruins stood silently in the darkness. The assault team gathered around, staring in hushed awe. Not even a flicker on our detection skills. "What's going on?" The silence, the lack of beasts, and the mysterious structure only deepened their unease. Speculations began to swirl among the team. Some wondered if the ruins hid treasure instead of a dungeon boss. As they searched, their eyes were drawn to a single object, an old sword stuck in the ground, partially buried in rubble. The captain stepped closer to examine it. "We'll need to appraise it first to be sure," he said cautiously. "But judging by its aura, this weapon might be incredibly valuable. Still, treasures like these often come with traps." Despite the warning, one man stepped forward. Kim Yongjin, a confident C-rank tank, brushed off the captain's concerns. "Even if it's trapped," he said, "I can handle it." Without hesitation, he grasped the sword. The blade began to glow with a crimson aura. An overwhelming pressure spread through the air. Then the ground beneath them turned red, like it was bleeding. The earth shuddered. Eyes began to open across the floor itself. And yet Kim Yongjin pulled the sword free. The captain let out a relieved breath. "Looks like there were no traps after all." But his words trailed off as he looked into Kim Yongjin's eyes, now glowing red. Without warning, Kim Yongjin turned on the captain and swung the sword. The blade sliced clean through him. Everyone froze in shock. Then, with a voice not entirely his own, Kim Yongjin, now clearly possessed, declared, "Who dares claim the Fang monarch's blade?" A voice echoed in his mind. "Kill the intruders who dare enter the Fang Lord's territory. Kill them all." As the bloodshed began, elsewhere near the mining zone, the support team looked on in confusion. 3 goblin-like shadows were mining magic crystals with remarkable speed and precision. Lim Doyen stared, barely believing what he saw. He had heard of summoners before, but they usually could only manage 1 or 2 creatures at most. Yet Suho had summoned 3 goblins, and including the ghost that spoke earlier, that made 4. Unheard of. Suho stood nearby, reflecting on his own powers. Normally, shadow extraction required the presence of corpses, but he had discovered a workaround using goblin remains from the Shadow Dungeon. They were perfect for simple labor and worked without complaint. "Shadow extraction is really convenient," Suho murmured. "Beru, the ghostly knight," responded gruffly. "Please don't praise me while assigning me grunt work, young monarch." But his tone turned serious. "We came here to level up, not to run a mining operation." Suho nodded. By Hunter Association regulations, E-rank hunters weren't allowed to enter dungeons alone. He was planning to level up and then request a re-evaluation. He also remembered their secondary goal, restoring Beru's strength. Scattered across the cave floor were fragments of low-grade magic stones. "They might help restore your power," Suho said softly. Even these fragments contain traces of mana. Eat them quickly. Beru complied. But as he chewed on the crystal shards, his body tensed suddenly. He froze. He informed Suho, I just sensed the presence of a monarch just now. Suho's heart skips a beat. You mean my father? But Beru shakes his head. No, if it were your father, my power would have been fully restored on the spot. This presence, it's different. His eyes narrow as he scans the dungeon's energy, saying it's probably the beast monarch. Back near the entrance, a miner suddenly stiffened as a deep rumble echoed from a tunnel. He turned slowly toward the sound, the very tunnel the assault team had gone into. Then from the shadows, 3 blood-red eyes slowly opened. They glowed ominously, watching. A monstrous beast stepped forward from the tunnel, its form cloaked in thick shadows. Its eyes glowed with bloodlust, and jagged teeth gleamed beneath its snarl. Panic rippled through the group of miners. One miner swung his pickaxe in desperation, but the beast caught it in its jaws and bit down. The metal shattered like a twig, sending fragments clattering across the ground. The man stumbled backward, paralyzed by fear and hopelessness. Then a blur shot between them. Suho surged forward, wielding his own pickaxe. With a sharp swing, he struck the creature across the head, forcing it back just long enough to create distance. Evacuate, he shouted. I'll buy you some time. The miner didn't hesitate. He turned and ran toward the surface. Suho squared his stance, eyes locked onto the beast as its oppressive aura thickened the air. He recognized it, one of the steel-fanged lichens. The monster's power matched that of the D-rank creature he had fought back at the Korean Arts University. But unlike before, he wasn't alone. Behind him, Lim Doyen stood frozen in place. Suho could feel the hesitation radiating off him. Their eyes met. Suho's gaze silently offered Doyen a choice, retreat or stay. But Doyen didn't move. His voice was shaky but firm. He said he had tried helping others evacuate alone, but he had made a decision. He wouldn't run away by himself anymore. Suho gave a nod of approval. Then help me when I'm in danger, he said. With a fluid motion, Suho summoned 3 shadow goblins. From his inventory, he drew a weapon, a dark curved blade harvested from the shadow dungeon. It was far deadlier than a pickaxe. Doyen stood speechless. Not only was Suho summoning monsters, he was summoning weapons too. What kind of skill allowed this? Before he could process it further, Suho moved. With a sudden burst of speed, Suho launched forward. The lichen barely reacted before Suho's blade sliced through it with surgical precision. The beast collapsed. Doyen's jaw hung open. The goblin's shadows leapt up and down in excitement, celebrating the swift kill. Then Suho raised a hand and spoke a single command. Arise. The lichen's corpse began to tremble. Darkness surged beneath it. Another lichen lunged at them. But now 2 blades met its charge. Suho deflected its strike, and his newly born lichen's shadow countered with a crushing blow, sending the monster staggering. Barry, watching from the edge of the tunnel, couldn't hide his pride. The young monarch is already adapting to combat with shadow powers, he thought. Suho remained focused. He had realized something crucial. Extraction and summoning didn't consume mana. As his magical strength increased and the number of allowable extractions grew, he could build an army. Determined, Suho struck down another lichen with swift precision. Arise, he commanded again. Another shadow rose. Doyen stood stunned, barely breathing. Only one of the original shadow goblins remained. Suho faced the final beast. He defeated it without hesitation. Arise, he said once more. The shadow obeyed. Doyen remained rooted in place, staring at the impossible. This wasn't the strength of a typical E rank, the ability to command dead monsters. It wasn't normal. Suho could see the disbelief in Doyen's eyes. He gave a small, amused smile. I'm just a really good E rank, he said casually. Doyen's thoughts halted. A terrifying possibility crossed his mind. Could Suho be a false ranker? Someone who intentionally registered under a lower rank? Then Suho's eyes flickered. A system notification appeared before him. A quest has arrived. An entity with murderous intent is approaching. Eliminate the threat to secure your safety. Suho narrowed his eyes, scanning the battlefield. He had already defeated every lichen he could see. Yet the system insisted one more enemy remained. A chill crept through the air. There was something else, something coming. Ahead of them, someone approached through the smoke-filled tunnel. Lim squinted and whispered that the man was definitely part of the raid party, but something about him felt off. Suho stepped forward to intercept him, but before he could act, Lim suddenly rushed to question the man, asking what was going on and why he was alone. That was when it all went wrong. Without warning, the man lunged. A blade tore through the air, aimed straight for Doyen's chest. In an instant, Suho moved, pure instinct driving him. He grabbed Doyen by the collar and yanked him back, just barely avoiding a fatal strike. As Doyen stumbled away, eyes wide with shock, Suho raised a hand. With a sharp gesture, his shadow wolves burst into action. They snarled and charged the attacker, but Suho's instincts told him something was wrong. Dragging the unconscious Lim to safety, Suho questioned the nature of their attacker. This wasn't an ordinary hunter. This man was possessed. He glanced up and saw the red glow above the hunter's head. A red name. Suho's chest tightened. He had seen it once before, back at the Korean Arts University. And he remembered clearly, red names meant death. But Suho turned to Beru, asking quietly, "This doesn't mean it's a monarch like my father." Beru answered immediately, "It carries great power, but no, it's not at the level of a monarch. However, that doesn't mean you can handle it right now." Suho didn't flinch. His gaze remained locked on the enemy. "The system said it's an auxiliary tool to help me grow steadily," he muttered to himself. "If it gave me this quest, that means I have a chance." More than anything, he needed to grow stronger. He needed to reach his father. The possessed hunter roared, slashing down Suho's shadow soldiers with brutal ease. Yet Suho didn't waver. He stared down the red-named enemy, determination burning in his eyes. He said he would defeat this enemy and grow stronger. Right here, right now. Beru watched from the shadows, a flicker of awe in his gaze. Despite all the overwhelming trials he's faced, he never runs. In Suho's still developing figure, Beru could see it, the echo of the Shadow Monarch himself. Beru stepped closer, offering advice. "That thing's true form is the sword. If you can sever its arm and separate it from the host, it won't be able to move anymore." Hearing that, Suho nodded and summoned his shadow wolves. The possessed hunter sensed the shadows and let out a deafening roar. 3 shadow wolves lunged at him head-on. One of them clamped its powerful jaws around the blade itself, halting the enemy's motion. Suho's eyes widened in surprise. The wolves were regenerating again after being cut down. Beru nodded in confirmation. Shadow soldiers are spiritual bodies. As long as you supply them with mana, they'll keep rising. He then asked Suho, "Do you like this power?" But before Suho could answer, their entire force of shadow soldiers was wiped out in a single violent sweep. Suho's voice wavered as he questioned, "What's so great about the power of shadow soldiers?" Beru's expression hardened. "They were defeated because your mana is still weak, young monarch." Then unexpectedly, the possessed hunter spoke, its voice thick with disbelief and rage. "How can an insignificant being like you wield the Shadow Monarch's power?" Suho's eyes narrowed. The monster could talk. Beru's voice rang out with fury, snapping at the possessed man for daring to call the young monarch of the same bloodline as Jinwoo. The enemy's burning eyes narrowed in recognition. A hateful growl escaped his lips. "The Shadow Monarch's bloodline. To think I would encounter it here." He roared, declaring Suho the sworn enemy of the Fang monarch. Suho responded by hurling a dagger at him. The possessed warrior deflected it with ease. Without pause, Suho summoned more weapons from his inventory and launched them like a storm. But the enemy batted away each one effortlessly. Suho muttered to himself. It was exactly what he expected. A red-named monster could easily deflect attacks of this level. His eyes swept the battlefield, scanning for opportunities. Scattered weapons lay strewn across the ground. Suho raised a hand. One by one, the weapons trembled. With a fierce command, he launched the entire arsenal toward the enemy. Beru observed from the sidelines, his eyes filled with admiration. What Suho was displaying wasn't just raw instinct. It was a natural aptitude for ruler's authority, a power he had unknowingly used since birth. But even that wasn't enough. The possessed warrior let out a furious roar, and with one sweeping motion, shattered the entire volley of incoming weapons. The sheer force of it sent a tremor through the tunnel. Suho charged again, sword in hand, refusing to back down. But with terrifying ease, the enemy cleaved the blade in two. A flicker of panic flashed through Suho's mind. If even a goblin-forged weapon can't survive one strike, then what do I even have left to fight with? He barely dodged the next blow, his body moving on instinct, smooth and fast. One wrong move, and it would all be over. The enemy sneered, mocking him cruelly. Why do you keep running, coward? Just like the Shadow Monarch you idolize, always hiding behind his shadow soldiers. Suho gritted his teeth. The insult stung, but he forced his emotions down. It was bait, meant to draw him into a reckless attack. And deep inside, he knew the truth. Right now, he didn't have the confidence to face this enemy head-on. If only I had more power. His thoughts drifted to a moment in the hospital, not long ago. He had asked Beru why, even with the seal broken, his old strength hadn't returned. Beru had answered calmly. The seal had suppressed Suho's abilities since birth. What he was experiencing now wasn't a regression, but the slow reawakening of his true potential. The power he once wielded inside the tower had never been permanent. That overwhelming strength had been part of the trial itself. The tower was never just a battlefield, it was a test, a place to prove he could carry the burden of his own power. Once the test was over, pass or fail, the strength would fade, but the experience that remained. Suho had asked if that meant the tower wasn't a game. Beru had reassured him. It was no illusion. The blood, the struggle, the fury, they were all real. The tower had simply shown him what he could become. A realization struck Suho. He remembered his own fighting style back then. Close quarters, hand to hand, and Beru's words echoed again. Shadow soldiers are spiritual bodies. As long as there's mana, they can regenerate infinitely. His eyes flicked to Beru. If Beru could shift forms, what about others? Suho summoned his shadow wolf. The enemy laughed at the display, mocking Suho for resorting to another trick. It lunged, blade drawn, ready to end the fight. Suho dodged again, creating space between them. Just enough. As the cursed blade came crashing down toward him, Suho's hand moved. The shadow wolf began to merge into his arm, its essence fusing with his limb. The cursed blade slammed into Suho, but it didn't cut. The enemy's smirk twisted into confusion. The strike had been blocked. Suho raised his arm, revealing a dark, armored gauntlet formed from the wolf's shadow. He commented dryly that the steel fang lichen was living up to its name. The clawed gauntlet held firm, stopping the sword in its tracks. Now free from the enemy's pressure, Suho grinned. This changed everything. With this gauntlet, close combat is more than enough, he muttered. At that moment, a system notification flashed before his eyes. Shadow extraction has leveled up to level 2. New ability unlocked. Form change. Suho's smile deepened. The real fight had just begun. And as the tunnel echoed with the clash of steel and shadow, he and the possessed enemy collided in a ferocious, close-range duel. Neither willing to back down. From the shadows, Beru observed silently. He couldn't help but marvel. Good heavens, to weaponize a shadow soldier. Though the Shadow Monarch far surpassed all others in terms of mastery, manipulating shadows with absolute freedom, Suho, this young monarch, was still like a newly hatched ant larva, only just beginning to grasp the nature of his powers. And yet, despite having no teacher, Suho had instinctively begun unraveling the next step in mastering shadow authority. His combat sense, his innate feel for the ruler's authority, and even his improvisational use of shadows all pointed to one conclusion. Suho was a natural-born prodigy. Blow after blow, Suho pummeled the enemy, slamming him into the dungeon wall. Dust billowed, but before he could finish it, the enemy rose again, defiant. Without hesitation, Suho surged forward. Weapons scattered on the ground responded to his call, lifting into the air like a deadly storm before crashing toward the enemy. This was Suho's moment. His fists, now cloaked in pure shadow energy, drove into the enemy again and again. Each hit echoed with the force of his resolve. The possessed warrior had no time to recover, and finally, it ended. Suho exhaled, a trace of worry still lingering. The red-named opponent had been dangerous but not invincible. Beru remained quiet, watching with pride flickering in his glowing eyes. Suho, catching his breath, reflected on the battle. At the very least, he had learned a new fighting technique, an unexpected but valuable reward. Then a system notification appeared. You have learned the skill, Storm Slash. Suho's eyes lit up. It was exactly the kind of reward he had hoped for. He could already feel the energy pulsing inside him, the technique taking root. Shadow energy swirled at his fingertips. He needed a proper weapon to use it. His gaze landed on the cursed weapon, the Fang blade. From within the sword, a whisper echoed in defiance. How could I be defeated by the bloodline of the Shadow Monarch? This is humiliating. It sensed Suho's approach and seethed. This isn't over. Humans are always greedy. Let him touch me. The moment he does, I'll devour him. Suho's hand closed around the hilt. Item acquired. Raken's Fang. Suho smirked. Looks a lot better than those goblin swords. Yet within the weapon's consciousness, the prideful spirit still rebelled. How could a sword that inherited the power of the Fang monarch not be able to dominate a mere human? Another notification appeared. Blessing acquired. Great Shaman Kandiaru's blessing. Suho steadied his breath, eager to test his new skill. Shadow energy surged as he activated Storm Slash, sending shock waves that destroyed everything around him in a massive arc of devastation. Suho admired the damage but frowned slightly. Drains all my mana with just one use. But I like the power. Beru, standing by, commented that shadow extraction and shadow authority would prove to be far greater, thousands of times more powerful. Later, Lim groaned and slowly regained consciousness, his vision swimming. Suho stood beside him, calm and composed. Lim, confused, asked what had happened. Suho replied simply, "It's a long story. Let's talk on the way out." Outside the gate, Suho paused, turning back toward the portal. There might still be survivors inside, he said. As Suho stepped back through the gate, Do-Yun watched silently, thoughts racing. An E-rank summoner. On paper, it sounds unimpressive. So how is he growing this strong? But in the end, he shook his head. That didn't matter right now. What mattered was that Suho was saving people. Back inside, more steel fang lichens emerged from the shadows, glowing with malice. Suho met them head-on, smashing through with raw strength. Still, he noted that many wolf beasts remained. Beru urged him to finish them off, for the experience and growth. But as Suho attacked, he noticed something strange. The sword's damage output had dropped. He questioned the Fang blade. The weapon answered coldly, stating it refused to cooperate with the bloodline of the Shadow Monarch. Beru mocked the blade, saying that granting power only when fighting weaker foes was a petty ability. The sword retorted sharply, asking what kind of hunter seeks prey stronger than themselves. Beru responded proudly, "The young lord just defeated you, and you were relatively strong." The two bickered, their voices overlapping. Suho sighed. A talking bug and now a talking sword. This is getting ridiculous. But then, his attention snapped to something nearby. He moved swiftly through the dungeon, and soon he arrived at a chilling sight. The sanctuary of the Fangs. Hunter corpses were strewn across the floor in silence. Suho's eyes narrowed, his fists clenched. Beru quietly confirmed. They were all dead. The sword, however, remained cold and emotionless. I merely eliminated those who dared to trespass, it said. It is my mission to guard the sanctuary of the Monarch of Fangs. Suho gripped the Fang blade tightly, then suddenly drove it into the ground with force. He whispered under his breath, "Be quiet, just for a moment." At that instant, a system notification appeared before his eyes. Shadow extraction is available on this target. Suho stared at the message, momentarily stunned. Beru, observing quietly, stepped forward and explained in a calm, instructive tone. Any corpse, regardless of species or origin, can be turned into a shadow soldier, young monarch. Suho looked down at the fallen body of the hunter. After a long pause, he slowly knelt and gently lifted the body in his arms, choosing to carry it himself. Beru tilted his head in confusion and asked, "Why not perform shadow extraction?" Suho's voice was low, filled with quiet conviction. Making them fight again after death would only be another form of punishment. A respectful silence settled between them. Suho carefully covered the fallen body, his expression solemn and composed. Then after a moment's thought, Suho raised his gaze. "Beru, you said this place is a sanctuary of a monarch. Is it possible my father has one too?" He hesitated before continuing. "He fought and defeated other monarchs, didn't he? Who were they? Are they connected to the outer gods?" Beru gave a slow nod and began his explanation. "The outer gods are the enemies your father faces now, the monarchs. They were his enemies in the past." He raised his claw and continued. "There are 9 monarchs in total." Suho remained silent, listening intently as Beru listed them one by one. "The great Sung Jinwoo, your father, is the king of the dead, the monarch of shadows. Then there is the king of beasts, the monarch of fangs, the queen of insects, the monarch of plagues, the king of monstrous humanoids, the monarch of the iron body, the king of demons, the monarch of white flames, the king of giants, the monarch of the beginning, the king of snow folk, the monarch of frost, the king of demonic specters, the monarch of transfiguration, and lastly, the most fearsome of them all, the king of berserk dragons, the monarch of destruction." Beru paused, his tone now filled with reverence. Though each monarch possessed power beyond comprehension, 8 of them were defeated. All fell at the hands of your father, the Shadow Monarch. Sung Jinwoo. Suho's eyes widened, disbelief washing over him. The sword's voice erupted with twisted rage, its hatred seething like a storm. "The monarch of shadows is the enemy who killed my master. The monarch of fangs." It snarled. "If only my strength remained uncorrupted, I would have torn you apart, blood of the Shadow Monarch, and cast your remains to the wolves." Despite the blade's fury, Suho remained composed. His tone was steady, even understanding. He replied, "My father must have fought the other monarchs to protect the earth, just like you fought to defend this sanctuary from intruders. Both of you acted to protect what mattered to you." He stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "But there's something that doesn't sit right with me. Your assumption that you have to fight me just because I carry his blood." Suho's voice sharpened. "If your mission is to protect this place, then isn't it foolish to turn against the son of the one who already defeated the monarch of fangs?" A heavy silence fell over the sanctuary. The sword's aura flickered, its defiance shaken. Suho stepped forward again, gripping the hilt firmly. "I want to find my parents. They were separated by invaders from outer gods, and I'll do whatever it takes to get them back." He paused, his tone softening. "This sanctuary might not survive the outer gods' invasion on its own, but if you help me, then I'll help you protect this place." The sword hesitated. Suho lifted it slightly, his voice firm with resolve. "Shadow and Fang," he said, "let's fight together." A moment of silence passed. The scene shifted to a quiet cafe, its atmosphere calm as people walked by. Inside, a reporter sat across from Lim Dogyeon, a solemn expression on his face. "Can you tell us what happened in the D-rank dungeon yesterday?" he asked. Lim Dogyeon, one of the few survivors of the incident, nodded slowly. He thought to himself, even if Suho is just an E-rank, he deserves recognition for what he did. This is my chance to repay the debt I owe him. And so, he told them everything. Later that evening, an article began circulating online. It told the gripping story of a full strike squad wiped out in a D-rank dungeon, only for an E-rank hunter to emerge as the unexpected savior. It detailed how one young hunter charged alone into the fray, fighting off deadly magical beasts to save the lives of countless others. The piece included interviews with witnesses who saw it all firsthand, ordinary people and fellow hunters alike, who all remembered one name, the E-rank hunter who didn't run, the one who stood his ground, Sung Suho. The scene shifted to the Black Tortoise Guild's management office. Inside the conference room, Lee Young-ho leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against the table. "We should consider recruiting a few more porters," he suggested. One of the staff members nodded. Or maybe we bring in additional E-rank hunters to support the reinforcement pickup teams. At that, Jung-ho slid over a candidate profile on his tablet. Take a look at this one, he said. The staff member read the report aloud. An E-rank hunter evacuated an entire mining team during a D-rank dungeon break, fought off magic beasts, and carried wounded strike team members to safety. His eyebrows rose. An E-rank did all this. Jung-ho gave a sharp nod. Reach out to him. Immediately. If a big guild like ours brings him in, it'll make for a killer headline. A hero rises from the E-ranks. Moments later, a staffer dropped his phone in disbelief. Jung-ho glanced up. Did Hunter Sung Suho reply? The staffer hesitated before responding. Yes, but he declined the invitation. What? Jung-ho blinked in confusion. An E-rank turning down the Black Tortoise Guild. That doesn't make any sense. What kind of rookie refuses an offer from one of the top guilds? The staff member scratched his head. He said he's not planning to join any guild right now. Maybe he'll change his mind after some thought. Eventually, he'll realize how unreasonable it is to operate solo. Meanwhile, Suho stared at his phone, letting out a soft sigh. Unread messages piled up, guild invitations, scouting requests, and more. He turned to Beru. Since returning from the dungeon, I've been swamped with offers. Beru's tone was full of pride. It's only natural, young monarch. Many desire your talent. But Suho looked unimpressed. Most of them just want to hire me as a collector or a porter. Why are so many trying to recruit me for grunt work? More importantly, Suho understood the true reason he couldn't join a guild yet. Doing so would restrict his freedom and limit his potential growth through the leveling system. He stood and changed the subject. Shall we continue the discussion about Raken's Fang? He remembered the moment he had extended the offer. Shadow and Fang. Let's fight together. Silence had filled the sanctuary back then. Raken's Fang had hesitated, baffled at Suho's audacity. How could he say something so absurd so easily? But in that silence, a realization had dawned. If this shadow becomes an ally and not an enemy. Finally, the sword had agreed, on one condition, that Suho take it to another sanctuary of the Monarch of Fangs. Now back in the present, Suho looked at the blade. Do you know how to find the next sanctuary? Raken's Fang pulsed with confidence. If it's a sanctuary of the Monarch of Fangs, I can sense it, no matter how far. But something's off. I can feel it. The gate has vanished. A dungeon break. The sword responded. Suho's expression hardened. So the sanctuary turned into a field-type dungeon. Field-type dungeons were different. Unlike normal gates, they emerged after a dungeon break when monsters spilled into the surrounding area. Without a gate to seal them in, the land became a corrupted zone, overrun with creatures, untouched by humans. Suho quickly typed out a message to his uncle, notifying him of the new objective. If this corrupted sanctuary was truly a field dungeon, then that would be his next destination. Let's go, he said. It's time to find the sanctuary of the Monarch of Fangs. The story shifts to high in the mountains. Beneath the pale, watchful gaze of the moon, an ominous stillness cloaks the land. Cold air whispers through the trees as Suho stands before a towering gate carved into the cliffside. Etched across its rusted metal surface is the unmistakable emblem of the Hyena Guild, a crude warning slashed in paint. Private territory. Trespassers will not be spared. But Suho doesn't flinch. Fang's presence stirs beside him, its silent pull confirming what Suho already suspects. This is the place. A cursed sanctuary hidden within a den of rogues. Razor wire coils above, fencing off a territory ruled by predators in human form. Men who call themselves hunters, but act no better than thugs. The Hyena Guild. Their reputation for brutality precedes them, but Suho remains unfazed. His aura begins to rise, a subtle surge of pressure pulsing through the air. From behind him, Beru materializes, voice filled with quiet urgency. He urges Suho to turn back, to stop wasting time and focus on leveling up. But Suho's expression doesn't change. He says nothing. Instead, he lifts his hand toward a nearby surveillance camera. A flicker of energy snaps through the air. The camera explodes in a burst of sparks, metal and glass raining down. The Hyena Guild won't see what's coming, not until it's too late. With quiet resolve, Suho steps forward, Fang's earlier words echoing in his mind. The fog thickens as he advances. But this is no natural mist. It slithers through the trees unnaturally, heavy, twisting, alive. Fang explains, "This isn't ordinary weather. The mist is born from dimensional interference, chaotic magic that warps reality and bends space. It acts as a breach, linking realms, dragging beings like Fang from distant worlds to Earth. Entities from the void are forcing their way through. A full-scale invasion is coming, but Suho doesn't falter. If the creatures are powerful, they'll take longer to pierce the veil between worlds. That's time he can use, time to grow stronger." He moves deeper into the fog, and from the swirling shadows they emerge. The beasts, twisted, snarling creatures, razor-clawed Biga, and the hulking form of Black Razan, stalk from the gloom, red eyes gleaming like coals. They don't wait. With unrelenting bloodlust, they charge. But Suho is calm. The sword thrums in anticipation, sensing the coming storm. Yet Suho doesn't draw it. Fang's spirit stirs, urging him to unleash its power. But Suho stands firm. He's already chosen how he'll fight. The sword will rest, for now. The monsters snarl, then Suho drops into a stance, shoulders squared, fists clenched. His body crackles with power. He attacks. A blazing punch slams into the nearest beast's jaw, sending it skidding across the ground. Another follows, faster, sharper. Every strike lands with surgical precision. Then Ruler's authority activates. Invisible force lashes out from Suho's mind, flinging enemies back through sheer will alone. Raising one hand, Suho channels Fang's energy. With a fluid, deliberate motion, he unleashes a technique. Skill activated, Storm Slash. A whirlwind of energy spirals around him. Blades of force carve through the mist, slicing through everything in their path. The monsters howl, shredded by the storm. Still, the battle isn't over. Suho's hand flares again, this time with shadow magic. Darkness crawls up his arm, pooling into form. It morphs and hardens, shaping into a massive gauntlet, jagged and pulsing with power. Now armed with pure shadow, Suho dives back into the fray. Beru watches from above, tense. There's awe in his gaze. This is the power of a monarch's bloodline. The sword hums at Suho's back, glowing with blue flame, as if acknowledging its wielder's lineage. And still Suho moves, relentless. With every strike, the razor-clawed beasts fall. His gauntlet crushes bone. His shadow magic intensifies. He's not just winning, he's becoming something else, a shadow in the mist. Suho now commands 5 shadow soldiers. Thanks to his rising intelligence stat, he controls them with ease. Beru watches. The sight reminds him of the legendary monarch's legions. Yet this feels different. Before Beru can comment further, Suho cuts him off, sharp and cold. There's no time for comparisons. Above them, the sky darkens. Wind tears through the trees. Suho's presence swells. Together, Suho and Beru observe a gated area from the cover of trees. Dim lights flicker across the site. At its center, veiled in mist and steel, stands the gateway to the sanctuary. Guards patrol the perimeter. Near a fire, 2 men speak in hushed tones, clearly unsettled. This place isn't empty. Civilians wander the outer roads, restless on edge, despite the hour. Suddenly, a truck rumbles through the entrance. Its headlights cut through the fog. Suho stiffens. Something feels wrong. He watches as the truck halts. Guards leap out, dragging captives from the back. Chains clatter. A cage door slams shut. Then he sees her, a woman among the captives, eyes defiant yet terrified. Suho's chest tightens. Rage simmers beneath his calm exterior. He understands now. This is human trafficking. Beru warns him from the shadows, hesitant. But Suho has already made his choice. He vanishes in an instant, a blur of shadow and fury. Beru's eyes widen as the energy around him trembles from Suho's departure. His father, Jinwoo, the Shadow Monarch, and his grandfather who faced injustice with unshakable will. That legacy surges within him. Without hesitation, Suho strikes. A thug holding the woman barely registers the impact before crumpling to the ground. Panic erupts. The gang stumbles back, eyes wide, mouths open, no time to react. Beru watches from the trees, his gaze intense. Suho landed with a thud, his gaze sharp and unwavering. The Hyena Guild thugs panicked at the sudden appearance, shouting demands, asking who he was and what he was doing there. But Suho didn't answer. His mind raced, calculating every risk. He knew full well, invading another guild's territory like this was illegal. For a brief moment, hesitation crept in. His jaw clenched, his resolve wavered. But then his eyes ignited, blue, shadowy, and cold. His aura erupted. Darkness surged from his body, shadows twisting violently as they took shape, forming monstrous silhouettes that growled with menace. The air thickened with pressure. Fury churned beneath his calm surface. Without a word, Suho stepped forward, each movement deliberate, unstoppable. The hyena thugs rushed in with a roar, weapons drawn, fists ablaze with magic and steel. But Suho moved like a storm, controlled, efficient, and deadly. But Suho slipped past effortlessly, countering with a swift strike that sent the thug crashing to the ground. Just a D rank, hardly worth unleashing his full power. Then in one smooth motion, Suho leapt into the air, his body twisting mid-flight. A perfectly timed double roundhouse kick connected with the side of a thug's head, sending him into unconsciousness before he even hit the ground. From the shadows, Beru watched, silently impressed. Suho's growth was undeniable. D-rank opponents didn't even pose a challenge anymore. Suho exhaled slowly and opened his status window. Level 16. But something gnawed at him. It had come too easily. Beru watched with pride, saying, "That was a very clean finish, young monarch," his voice low and reverent. The captives look on, stunned, grateful. One asks if he's from the Hunter Association. Suho shrugs it off. They can call him whatever they want. He tells them to find shelter, his voice calm but firm. The captives nod, tears in their eyes. Still cloaked in his dark aura, Suho scans the area. Something feels off. It draws him to a nearby garage, run down, half buried in the ground. Suho approaches, raises the door. It groans open. The inside is dark, still, and cold. Empty cages line the walls. Discarded chains, pills, and scraps of clothing litter the floor. This place wasn't just for humans. Beru floats in behind him, sensing something strange. An energy, faint but foreign. As they ventured deeper, Suho suddenly froze. His sharp eyes locked onto a small creature trembling in the darkness. It looked like a puppy. But something didn't sit right. His mind raced, stitching together the twisted operations of the guild they were investigating. Anger simmered beneath his calm exterior as he stepped closer, eyes fixed on the chained pup. Fang's voice rang out softly in his mind, cutting through the silence. That wasn't just a dog. It was a young wolf, a descendant of the monarch of Fangs, the last of its bloodline, a survivor marked by tragedy. Fang went on to explain, after the monarch of Fangs was defeated by the Shadow Monarch, he hid this lone heir, shielding it with the last remnants of his power. He hadn't left a successor to rule, only one to survive, a final, desperate attempt to preserve his legacy. Suho crouched beside the trembling creature. Even in its frail state, he could feel the faint trace of energy pulsing within it. Weak, but undeniably real. Beru speaks again, his voice low. "What will you do, young monarch?" Before Suho can answer, a sharp spike of energy rips through his senses. He turns, eyes darting across the darkness. Something's here, watching. Beru flutters, tense. Suho scans the shadows. Then he sees it, massive, menacing, and stepping into the light. Eyes glow with fury. Not at Suho, but at the hyena guild members who cannot even handle trades. And he was done watching humans fail. The sword's voice echoes, sharp and unwavering, cutting through the tension like a blade through smoke. The truth is laid bare. Broki is no ordinary beast. He is the ancient guardian once entrusted with the protection of the Fang's monarch's descendant. But that purpose has long been twisted. Suho holds the young wolf pup close, sensing the bloodline it carries, an heir to a fading legacy. Then Broki roars, a sound more beast than man. Without warning, he lunges, claws cleaving through the darkness with ruthless precision. Suho reacts just in time. He sidesteps the deadly strike, heart pounding. Broy's speed and power are monstrous. A low growl rumbles from Broki's throat. It isn't just an attack, it's a challenge. A warning to stay out of matters bound by ancient law. With a thunderous leap, Broki launches again. His massive form arcs through the air, claws glowing red with fury. He crashes down like a meteor. The ground splits beneath him. Stone and earth erupt in violent waves. A shock wave blasts outward, shaking the battlefield. Beru cries out, wings spreading wide as he speeds toward the impact site, desperate to reach Suho. Amid the shattered rubble, Suho lies bruised and bleeding. Blood trickles from his brow, but he grins through the pain. The hit was brutal, too brutal. But he pushes through, forcing himself upright. Beru's voice echoes, urgent, shaken. But Suho tells him to be quiet. A system message flashes in his vision. Beru watches closely, a cold realization settling in his eyes. Broki's energy, it's laced with something darker. It's the corruption of the outer gods. Suho's mind races as the puzzle clicks into place. Broki towers over Fang's sword, eyes burning with a fierce glow, as he clutches the pup tightly. Fang's voice rings out, thunderous and livid, as Fang demands to know if Broki even understands what he's doing to a monarch's heir. Broki doesn't flinch. A perversion of his former role, he speaks of survival, that only the strong deserve to live, that the weak are born to be consumed. His claws tighten around the pup. His eyes gleam with fanatic purpose. His mouth curls into a cruel snarl. Saliva glistens between his fangs as the truth finally spills out. Broy has been feeding on the pup's blood, draining the power of the monarch's lineage to fuel his rise. Fang seethes, his voice erupting with rage. He swears to end this himself. The air crackles as Broki mocks Fang's bloodline. He taunts Fangs with jeers, calling Raken weak, claiming that the death of Raken proved strength is all that matters. He roars with triumph, declaring himself the rightful heir, the next monarch of Fangs. But before the boast can echo, a sudden flash tears across the battlefield. A blade of raw, brutal energy slices through the air. Suho moves. Broki's eyes widen in disbelief. He wasn't ready. The counter hits with precision, halting his rampage mid-stride. Beru swoops in, grabbing the pup and retreating with beating wings. Suho follows through, slashing the corrupted beast's side. Sparks explode. The impact sends tremors across the field. Fang is close, vibrating with uncontainable rage. Suho stands firm. His aura burns bright blue, determined, steady. The bond between shadows and Fangs, an alliance forged not in trust, but in war and necessity, is about to be tested. A whisper from the past, a trail that might lead to his father's fate. Broki snarls, his red aura crackling violently. His voice drips venom. He locks onto Suho, fury blinding. "I'll kill him," his twisted voice hisses, more animal than man. A sudden flash of light erupts behind them. Urgent quest, hunt the hyena. Objective, eliminate Broki and secure the monarch's heir. Beru holds the pup, frustration boiling in his eyes. He wants to fight, but this is Suho's battle now. Broy's red aura floods the air. Malice turns tangible. The tension grows thicker with every breath. Suho steps forward, aura blazing. This isn't just a fight, it's retribution. The dark secrets of the Hyena Guild finally came to light, and with them, chaos exploded all around. Desperate captives screamed out, calling for Broki's aid, their voices shaking with fear and panic. But Broki barely acknowledged them. His cold eyes were locked on Suho. Suho stood firm, blade in hand, his aura flaring with sheer resolve. Broki lunged without hesitation. His jaws snapped shut like a guillotine, tearing through nearby enemies with terrifying ease. Blood splashed, bodies fell, and Suho's eyes widened, momentarily frozen by the raw brutality unfolding before him. To Broki, humans were nothing but prey. But Suho didn't waver. He charged forward, blade aimed at Broki's chest. Yet before the strike could land, Broki caught the sword barehanded, his grip unshakable, as if steel itself bent to his will. Between them, the air grew heavy. all colliding in a deadly silence. The strong decide who lives or dies, Broki snarled. With a sudden swipe, the space around them crackled. Suho was thrown back like a rag doll, crashing into rubble with the force of a meteor. Dust clouds rose, but he didn't stay down. Suho surged forward again, slicing through the debris like a bullet fired from a cannon. Broki stomped the ground, fortifying himself as his aura exploded, unleashed like a beast unchained. He roared, the earth trembling beneath him. But just as he was ready to strike, his eyes caught something. From above, Suho dove in, a storm of lethal intent in his wake. Steel met flesh. Suho's blade cut deep, breaking through Broki's defenses and spraying arcs of blood across the battlefield. But Broki only grinned. "That all you've got?" he mocked. His laughter stopped. A sharp pain ripped through his spine, an unexpected backstab that staggered him. Suho stood tall, eyes blazing, blades spinning with deadly precision. This battlefield belonged to him now. Fang's sword asked Broki, "Why have you changed?" he growled, strength fading from his limbs. Fang's asked if he remembered the oaths once sworn, to honor once held. A white, sinister symbol flashed across his eyes, dark lightning coiling like chains, clouding his thoughts. Desperation twisted Broki's face. He grabbed the spinning blade, trying to rip it free. "No," he roared, slamming it into the ground, fighting against the corruption creeping into his soul. Loyalty, that was never real. "Only power matters," Broki hissed. "Fang's weakness disgusts me." He roared, fists swinging mid-charge. The strike collided with Suho's gut, a brutal impact that made his bones creak under pressure. Suho fell to a knee, gasping. Pain surged, threatening to drown him. But then, his father's image flashed in his mind. His inspiration. Jinwoo wouldn't give up, and neither would Suho. His aura reignited, flaring into a raging storm. He clenched his fist, now crackling with raw, untamed energy. Then with a roar, Suho leapt forward, striking Broki's core with everything he had left. The blow shattered through Broki's defenses. Shockwaves rippled down his spine. Watching from above, Beru remained still, tension radiating from his shadowed form. And then Fang, shattered, crumpled on the ground. His blade was broken, split in two. A faint blue glow pulsed weakly from the crystal at his core. His body couldn't move. His mind, however, was racing. "Is this how it ends?" he thought. Crushed, powerless, unable to protect the future I was entrusted with. Everything, their lineage, their legacy, now rested on Suho's shoulders. But Fang's spirit refused to break. With every shred of willpower, he called to what remained of his strength. Even shattered, he reached deep, gathering the final remnants of his energy. And something responded. The young wolf pup by his side, the one Suho had saved, felt the call. Their wills aligned, bridged by shared purpose. And then it happened. Fang poured the last of his power into the pup. "I'll give him everything I have left," Fang decided. The future is his now. A fiery energy wrapped around the young beast. The pup roared, transformed, burning with newfound strength. Fang's legacy now flowed through him. On the battlefield, Suho continued to fight, each swing slower, heavier. His body was giving out. One final attack from Broki sent him flying, crashing into the dirt. He struggled to move. His vision blurred. His health bar flashed. Breathing heavily, Suho stared at the sky. Every muscle ached, but he refused to fall. Suho's fists clenched, burning with determination, but shadowed by doubt. Broki loomed above him, sneering down like a predator toying with its prey. Still clinging to life, little worm, his expression mocked Suho's resilience. Suho, still reeling, stared up at the towering beast. "Can I really defeat him?" Broki answered his hesitation with action. With a guttural roar, he charged. Suho braced himself, but Broki's brutal onslaught was overwhelming. A surge of energy cut through the chaos, rippling through the air like lightning. From the dust stepped the pup, no longer the same. Fused with Fang's essence, the young beast had undergone a transformation. Broki's eyes widened in disbelief. That aura, he knew it. It was Fang's. The old wounds from the pup's earlier strike pulsed with blackened blood. The pup growled, every muscle coiled with purpose. Beside it, Suho rose slowly, battered but unbroken. His fighting spirit reignited, fueled by the pup's awakening. This battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. A system notification flashed before Suho's eyes. Fang's descendant pays tribute to your fighting spirit. Would you like to recruit the descendant as a companion? Suho met the young wolf's eyes, now blazing with power and resolve. Fang's will had not died. It had been reborn, and it now stood by Suho's side. The truth hit Broki. Fang had sacrificed himself, passing on every ounce of his power to the pup. Suho looked at the creature not with pity, but with newfound respect. This was no ordinary companion. It was a symbol of resistance, of everything they still had to fight for. Without hesitation, Suho made his choice. He accepted the pact. A surge of energy tore through them both, a rush of shared memories and burning purpose. Their bond crystallized instantly. Visions flashed in Suho's mind. The young wolf pup stared as the cloaked figure faded into the shadows, his final words echoing like a curse. Remember this. Strength is the only way forward. With that, he vanished, leaving behind more than just silence. He left the weight of an ancient legacy, now passed on to the next generation. Broki, the beast once feared, now trembled. He stared at the figure who had just marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. His voice cracked with disbelief. What are you? Why aren't you ending me? The figure didn't answer at first. The figure smirked, her voice colder than the void. This monster looks useful. You'll do nicely. She raised a glowing crystal. It pulsed with ominous energy as she pressed it into Broki's forehead. He roared in agony, the marks searing into his flesh. Fang's descendant howled, its cry echoing through the skies, filled with grief and fury. The mysterious figure spoke again, issuing a command. Capture humans alive. Deliver them to us. Her voice dripped with menace. The seed I've planted will make you stronger. If you survive it. Broki's form warped violently. Crimson energy spiraled around him. His fangs gleamed under the red haze and his eyes burned with madness. In the distance, shadowy figures watched in silence, glowing halos crowning their dark silhouettes. They weren't mere observers. They were architects of chaos, manipulating everything from behind the curtain. And Fang's descendant, it saw the truth. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about stopping the destruction before it swallowed everything. But to face what was coming, Suho needed strength. Strength he didn't yet have. Suddenly, another system prompt ignited across Suho's vision. New quest. Recruit the monarch's descendants or face the coming tide alone. The bond between Suho and the young wolf deepened. Their shared energy pulsed in sync, their souls briefly becoming one. From above, Beru watched in silence. For the first time, something had changed. Something not even the Shadow Monarch's transformation had foretold. Broki's growl shattered the stillness as his mutated body lunged forward, madness and fire. And then collision, the shockwave splintering the ground as Suho met the beast head-on. Suho's form shimmered, his silhouette briefly lost in a vortex of swirling dust and raw power. The bond skill had activated. A surge of mana coursed through his veins like wildfire, and from its core, a new ability was born. Beast Possession. Across the battlefield, Broki's eyes narrowed, sensing something primal intertwining with Suho's aura, something even he hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just borrowed strength, it was transformation. Suho's senses sharpened, his eyes caught even the subtlest movements in the air. Then Broki charged, a blur of fury, claws, and rage. But this time Suho didn't flinch. He moved like liquid shadow. Every attack was dodged with grace and precision. It wasn't just speed, this was instinct. In one fluid motion, Suho struck. A powerful kick landed squarely against Broki's chest. Shock waves burst outward from the impact. Broki stumbled back, his body trembling, blood dripping from his fanged jaw. Rage swelled inside the beast. A roar tore through the air like thunder, vibrating through the trees. His aura exploded outward, dark mana crackling violently, his desperation turning to savage wrath. Broki lunged once more, claws slashing, eyes wild with fury. But Suho was ready, every dodge effortless. From above, Beru watched in silence, his usually calm demeanor replaced by stunned awe. Broki snarled in disbelief. The power dynamic had shifted. The two collided again, fists meeting in a crackling explosion of force. Shockwaves ripped through the battlefield, tearing apart the ground beneath their feet. And then something else shifted. Another system notification flashed in Suho's vision. Unarmed combat skill activated. Physical attack power increased by 33%. Above, Beru hovered silently. His presence added weight to the growing pressure that now bore down on Broki. The beast could feel it, the invisible hand of the Shadow Monarch's legacy pressing against his spirit. Suho rose skyward, shrouded in brilliant light. His aura burned bright, infused with mana. Then, Suho surged downward, slamming Broki into the earth with a thunderous crash. The ground shattered beneath the force of the blow. A cloud of dust and broken stone engulfed the battlefield. The energy rippled outward, shaking trees in the distance. The clash had ended, for now. Suho rose from the shattered battlefield, the last wisps of beastly power fading from his aura. With the bond skill deactivated, he could finally return to himself again. His steps were heavy, breath ragged, body trembling under the brutal toll of the clash he had just survived. Nearby, Broki's eyes flickered with desperation. The monster's once indomitable presence now looked broken, defeated. The hunger for strength still burned inside him, but now it was mixed with something deeper. Regret. The wolf pup sat motionless beside Broki's fallen form, ears drooping. Broki's eyelid cracked open. A faint glimmer of light danced across his iris as long-buried memories surfaced. The battlefield faded in his mind, replaced by visions of the past, the one he had once sworn to protect, a solemn figure now lost to time. Above him, Suho stood tall. His expression was unreadable, a storm of sorrow, anger, and exhaustion flickering behind his eyes. The system's chime echoed through the silence. Broki has been defeated. The fight was over. Suho had won, yet victory tasted bitter. Beru floated beside him, his wings casting long shadows across the ruined earth. His voice, calm yet commanding, broke the stillness. "You've done well, young monarch." Suho gave a slight nod, but his thoughts had already shifted elsewhere. He could still feel it, a strange, lingering energy, one he hadn't recognized before. His eyes narrowed. Whatever it wasn't just a memory or leftover aura. Something far more dangerous was out there. Suho could feel it in his bones. Fleeting images clawed at his mind. Mysterious figures lurking in the shadows. Otherworldly beings tampering with Broki, infecting his gaze with something unnatural. A dark thought crept in. Could these puppeteers be connected to the Ataram, or were they something even worse? After hearing the name Ataram, Beru's expression darkened. He explained that the Ataram were one of the outer gods, ancient, transcendent beings who rarely interfered with mortal affairs directly. Instead, they acted through proxies, sending apostles to carry out their will. Yet the fact that hunters aligned with Itaram were now appearing so openly meant only one thing. Earth had already been drawn into their cosmic game. Suho listened, unsettled. His mind swirled with questions about these elusive gods. Noticing Suho's curiosity, Beru offered a potential solution. If he were allowed to consume Broki's corpse, he could peer into the creature's memories, and in doing so, regain some of his lost power. To Beru, it was a win-win. He'd uncover critical information and restore his strength. Suho, still processing the idea, shot him a questioning look, surprised by the sudden revelation of such an ability. But before he could respond, his gaze shifted toward the young wolf, the heir of Raken, who stood silently nearby, uncertainty in his eyes. Sensing the young wolf's sorrow, Suho approached him gently. He knelt, offering the pup a choice. He could stay with him or go somewhere else, wherever he felt safe. The wolf hesitated, but Suho's warm smile softened his fear. The pup leapt forward. In that moment, a silent bond was formed. With the matter settled, Suho drew out the key to his personal shadow domain and opened a portal. He asked Beru to handle Broki's remains while he took the young wolf to a place of safety. Beru didn't hide his amusement. As Suho stepped through the portal with the wolf by his side, watching Suho's decision in disbelief, Beru raised an eyebrow. This wasn't something he'd expected. And then, as if answering their unspoken questions, a system notification chimed into existence. The wolf was requesting a name. Caught off guard, Suho froze. He had never named anyone before. Without hesitation, he chose the name Gray, inspired by the wolf's elegant fur. Beru, however, was less impressed. To him, the name lacked flair. But Gray didn't seem to care, and another system prompt confirmed their alliance. Their trust level had increased, and Gray was granted his own territory within the Shadow Dungeon. Still, a practical question remained. What would Gray eat? Beru, unbothered, reassured Suho. A wolf of such noble blood would adapt easily, and besides, there were still plenty of monsters lurking inside the dungeon. That eased Suho's mind. He watched as Gray eagerly darted into the shadows and struck down a goblin with ease, the creature collapsing in one blow. Perched on a branch beside Beru, Suho observed quietly. He was genuinely impressed. Gray had adapted quickly, embracing his power without hesitation. Just then, the system buzzed again, granting Suho a new title, Wolf Slaughterer, a reward for defeating Broki. Suho blinked, confused. Broki had always seemed more like a hyena than a wolf, but Beru waved off the detail. System notice: seek the monarch's descendants and recruit them as companions. The system, Beru explained, had always operated in riddles. Its true purpose? To strengthen the user. But he warned there could be deeper intentions at play. He spoke of Suho's father, how the previous system had been crafted by an architect who wanted to turn him into a vessel, a puppet for the will of the old Shadow Monarch. The plan had been to break him, reshape him, but he resisted. Suho's father hadn't just survived the system, he had overthrown it, claimed its power, and redefined what it meant to be the Shadow Monarch. He ascended without being bound by the system's leveling rules. Beru added that Suho's system was different. This time, it wasn't built with malice. Still, its endgame remained unclear. Could it be grooming Suho for something greater? A new monarch, another rebellion against fate. But Beru warned, there could only be one true Shadow Monarch. Still, the system might be steering Suho toward a unique destiny, one that would unfold with time. Suho opened his status window. His growth had been impressive, especially after the battles against the misborns. Yet one detail continued to nag at him. His class remained blank. Despite his progress, the system still hadn't acknowledged him, and deep down, Suho knew, without Gray, he might not have survived the last fight. Determined to keep following the path laid out by the system, but only as long as it aligned with his own vision. Suho jumped from the tree and turned to Beru, ready for answers. Beru, having finished absorbing Broki's essence, reported what he had discovered. There was no direct link to an apostle or mind control, but something darker was involved. A human guild had been behind the scenes, a group called the Grim Reaper. They'd been aiding the Hyena Guild, supplying them with captives and possibly far more. The revelation struck Suho like a thunderbolt. Another guild, this time human, was entangled in the plot. The lines between monster and man had started to blur. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the scene shifted to a man seated in an office high above the city skyline. Well-dressed and poised, he answered a phone call with a casual air. On the other end was Tigu, a senior official within the Hunter Authority. Tigu wasted no time. His voice was firm as he questioned the man's possible ties to the Hyena Guild. Suspicion had been mounting, and Tigu was determined to get answers. But the executive remained calm, dismissing the allegations with a cold smile. Without hard evidence, he had no reason to answer to anyone, least of all Tigu. Undeterred, Tigu issued a warning. The Hunter Authority wouldn't stop digging until they uncovered the truth. If the man had any sense, he'd clean up his operation before it was too late. As the call ended, a flicker of anger crossed the executive's face. His calm shattered. With one brutal motion, he slammed his fist down, cracking the polished surface of the desk beneath him. This was no ordinary businessman. He was the vice commander of the Grim Reaper Guild, an organization now tied to multiple disturbing operations behind the scenes. From his drawer, he retrieved a shimmering pearl. The item pulsed with arcane light, It was Stardust, a rare and dangerous awakening stimulant. Hunters who consumed it gained a temporary surge in power, at a heavy cost. As he rolled the orb between his fingers, a grin crept across his face. With Stardust under their control, the Grim Reaper Guild could accelerate their rise and tighten their grip on the world. Back in the depths of the Shadow Dungeon, the young wolf, Gray, was moving like a blur. His fangs and claws tore through goblins with effortless precision. But before he could react further, another system message appeared. A daily quest. Finally, Suho's heart raced with anticipation. The task was simple: eliminate more goblins and continue clearing the dungeon. But the implications ran deeper. Why now? Why introduce daily quests? The answer dawned on him. Daily quests meant daily progress and steady growth. Beru nodded, watching the realization settle in. He suggested that perhaps the system now intended for Suho to claim full dominion over the Shadow Dungeon. Suho agreed, but a new question arose. The dungeon was massive. How was he supposed to gather 100 goblins at once? That's when he remembered. From an earlier raid, he had looted a peculiar item, a horn flute said to attract nearby goblins. Without wasting time, Suho pulled the item from his inventory. He lifted it to his lips and blew. The sound echoed through the dungeon like a pulse. Moments later, the shadows stirred. Goblins, dozens of them, came rushing in from every direction, drawn by the magical signal. Suho's eyes narrowed, his excitement rising. Perfect. Beru observed Suho's unfolding strategy with a quiet nod of approval. With a confident smirk, Suho dove into the chaos, fists crashing down like hammers as goblins fell before him in waves. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. The thrill was fading. These creatures, once terrifying, were now nothing more than stepping stones. They offered no real resistance, no true test of his growing power. Still, the quest had to be completed. He raised the horn once more and blew into it. The sound echoed, louder this time, deeper. A second wave of goblins surged into the dungeon, even more numerous than before. But Suho wasn't finished. With a swift motion, he raised the fallen goblins as shadow soldiers. The battlefield transformed. What had begun as a solo fight now became a full-scale war. At his side, Gray charged with unrelenting fury, leading the Shadow Army as they tore through the goblin horde. For 3 relentless hours, the clash raged on, until the entire dungeon was littered with the remains of Suho's enemies. By the end, Gray collapsed to the ground, completely drained. His breath came in shallow bursts as he lay sprawled on the stone floor. But Suho remained standing. Another system message blinked into view. Quest complete. Yet something was off. The counter didn't stop at 100 kills. It kept climbing. Suho narrowed his eyes, intrigued. Could there be hidden rewards for going beyond the requirement? His grin returned, wider than before. What if I push it even further? Gray, barely able to keep his eyes open, could only whimper in disbelief. But Suho pressed on, pushing past the limit, hunting down every last goblin until the system finally confirmed the quest completion for good. The reward screen appeared, and it didn't disappoint. Suho had unlocked bonus rewards, a full status recovery, 3 extra stat points, and 2 rare items. The blessed random box and the cursed random box. Just the full heal alone felt like a level up, washing away all signs of fatigue. The stat points were a welcome bonus, but now came the real decision. Go with the safe choice or gamble for something greater. Suho paused. In the end, he chose risk. He opened the cursed box. Light pulsed from within, and when it faded, he was holding a pair of obsidian gauntlets. Vulcan's gauntlets. They radiated brutal strength, amplifying his physical damage by 30%. His jaw tightened as he slid them on, whispering to himself, I may not be able to turn shadow soldiers into weapons forever, but with these, who needs to? But just as the excitement surged, a new system notification interrupted him. Gray's loyalty status had changed, from admiration to fear. Suho's enthusiasm faltered. He turned to Beru. What's going on? He asked, concern creeping into his voice. Beru sighed, his tone heavy. Gray wasn't like the shadow soldiers. He was alive, a creature with real limits. Only now did Suho realize the cost of his ambition. He gave a solemn nod. "You're right," he said quietly. "Let's take a break." As they exited the dungeon, Suho's thoughts turned toward a more human threat, the Grim Reaper Guild. There were still too many questions and too few answers. But before he could act, his phone buzzed. The caller ID read, "Senior Lim." The older man's voice was urgent. Something was wrong. Moments later, Suho met him at the Seoul Station field. Lim looked frustrated and flustered. "My team was supposed to handle corpse recovery today," he said, "but they've all gone missing, probably still hung over from last night's celebration." Understanding the situation, Suho agreed to help. He suited up in protective gear, preparing for the gritty task of hauling monster bodies when the hunting squad finally arrived. Their leader, a stern-faced man, stepped forward. From the looks of it, he was a healer. Oddly enough, he also seemed to be the highest-ranking hunter in the group. One glance at the situation, and his expression twisted with displeasure. "This dungeon wasn't easy to secure," he muttered under his breath. "If anything goes wrong here because you're understaffed, I'm taking this straight to the association." Suho kept calm but studied the man carefully. Something about him seemed off. Not just his attitude, but his presence, his role. Then it clicked. Lim's urgent call and the Reaper Guild's lingering influence in this area. These weren't random events. It was all connected, and Suho was now right at the center of it. Moments later, inside the dungeon, the hunter party, the tension in the air thickened as the mages raised their staffs and launched fireballs down the pitch-black corridors. Flames crackled, momentarily lighting up the suffocating darkness. With the path illuminated, the party leader, an experienced hunter known for his sharp instincts, wasted no time. He barked out formation orders, rallying the strike team. Then from the shadows, the enemy revealed themselves. Lizard-like monsters emerged in packs. Scales shimmered in the flickering firelight as they crept forward. The leader turned towards Suho and Senior Lim, his tone commanding. He ordered them to stay close to the strike team and collect the monster corpses immediately after the takedown. There could be no delays. Lim hesitated. The idea of standing in the middle of a live combat zone clearly unsettled him. But before he could voice a real protest, the leader's focus had already shifted back to the advancing monsters. Suho, meanwhile, remained calm, his thoughts elsewhere. "Lizard beasts," he mused silently, unimpressed. He had expected something greater, especially after obtaining Vulcan's horn. These creatures felt like little more than warm-up opponents. Still, there was something to gain. Suho rarely joined teams, so watching the hunters coordinate in real time could be a valuable lesson in group combat, something his solo style lacked. As the clash began, Suho crouched low, placing a hand against the damp stone floor. In a quiet, commanding voice, he invoked his skill. "Arise." From the surrounding shadows, 7 goblins appeared, his summoned shadow soldiers. Their sudden emergence brought a brief flicker of pride to Suho's expression. His growing power was becoming tangible. Without delay, the goblins rushed into action. As lizard monsters fell, Suho's summons moved swiftly and efficiently, retrieving bodies with machine-like precision. By the time the last monster was slain, the collection task was already complete. The party leader turned, expecting to find a pile of corpses waiting to be dealt with. Instead, his jaw dropped. Everything had already been handled. "What are those?" he muttered, eyes wide. Suho stood in the middle of the aftermath, calm and composed. He responded with casual confidence. Those were his summons. Senior Lim, watching nervously, braced for backlash. But the unexpected happened. The leader's expression shifted from shock to enthusiasm. He approached Suho, eyes gleaming, and grasped his hand. He offered Suho a position on the strike team as an exclusive collector, and he was willing to pay generously. Suho blinked, mildly caught off guard by the offer. Politely, he declined. But the leader wasn't ready to take no for an answer. He insisted Suho name his price. Before Suho could respond, a panicked hunter ran over, his face pale and voice trembling. He had found something disturbing. The team followed him cautiously to a clearing ahead. There, a human corpse lay sprawled on the ground, shrouded in faint, ghostly blue flames. Despite the burning aura, the body was long dead. The captain knelt beside it, his expression grave. It was clearly a human. not a monster. Suho and Lim exchanged a tense glance. Lim whispered under his breath, asking if it was who he thought it was. Suho nodded grimly. He recognized the signs. This was a misborn, an otherworldly being he had encountered before. Without hesitation, Lim turned to the captain, urging caution. Misborns weren't just another dungeon threat, they were chaos incarnate. One had already attacked their university recently, leaving devastation in its wake. Before the warning could fully settle in, more corpses appeared, each of them cloaked in the same haunting blue flames. The hunters grew uneasy. One of them suggested pulling back and alerting the Hunter Association. The leader hesitated but ultimately stood firm. The bodies, he reasoned, looked like ordinary humans, not hunters. And with several capable C-rank hunters in the party, he believed they could press on. Some of the hunters welcomed the decision with excitement, eager for more action. Suho, however, remained uneasy. Mistburns weren't ordinary threats. They weren't the kind of beings to underestimate. He voiced his concern, but the captain quickly shut him down. This is my operation. You follow my lead. With the decision made, the team ventured deeper into the tunnel. The air grew heavier. Flames from the mages lit the path, casting long, twisted shadows against the stone walls. Deeper within the dungeon, screams echoed violently off the stone walls, interrupted only by the crackle of eerie blue flames devouring fallen bodies. From a shadowed ledge above, three cloaked figures watched the grotesque scene unfold. Their faces were concealed behind twisted masks, each more sinister than the last. The one in a skull-like mask growled, clearly displeased. The flames, they're not strong enough, he muttered bitterly. We're running out of fuel. Beside him, another creature nodded grimly. The supply died with the hyena guild, the skull-masked one continued, voice tense with frustration. Without their bodies, our Stardust production will slow. The rat-like creature's grin widened. His gaze shifted toward the corridor outside. Humans are nearby, he said, voice dripping with malevolent excitement. The skull-masked leader hissed in response, his tone dark and satisfied. Perfect timing. With a savage flick, the rat-like figure unsheathed a jagged blade, letting its edge drag against the stone. Leave it to me, he whispered before vanishing into the shadows. Back in the main tunnel, the hunter party was holding their ground against another wave of lizard beasts. The battle was going well. Their leader, impressed by the team's performance, took a rare moment to reassess. He praised the group for their teamwork, and the mood briefly lightened. Pulling a shimmering orb from within his jacket, the leader raised it high. This, he said, is Stardust. The hunters gathered around, eyes widening with recognition. Stardust, a rare stimulant, could temporarily push a hunter's abilities far beyond their limits. Why hide it from us? One asked, intrigued. I was saving it for a real emergency, the leader answered, gaze fixed on the glowing orb, seemingly hypnotized by its radiance. But the moment was shattered in an instant. A shadow loomed behind him. The rat-like assassin struck without warning, his jagged blade delivering a brutal, crushing blow. The orb of Stardust slipped from the leader's hand and shattered against the stone floor. The leader fell to his knees, gasping. He's still alive, the creature sneered, amused. The hunters froze. This was no ordinary monster. It could talk. And worse, it reached into its own cloak and revealed another orb of Stardust. I don't need all of you, it said coldly, scanning the group with calculating eyes. The strong ones can entertain me. The rest will die. What followed was a slaughter. The creature moved like a phantom. His first strike split a hunter in two. His second, a merciless cut, felled the mage responsible for illuminating the tunnel, plunging the entire area into choking blackness. Blinded and disoriented, the remaining hunters stood no chance. Their screams echoed briefly before vanishing into silence. When the carnage was over, the rat-like figure grabbed the still-breathing team leader and dragged him across the blood-stained floor. Firewood secured, he muttered, disappearing back into the shadows, leaving the wounded behind to die. A sudden system alert blinked into Suho's view, a new quest notification. His eyes scanned it rapidly. It was a rescue mission. The objective: save the strike team from a powerful enemy before it was too late. Sensing his tension, Beru emerged beside him. Suho didn't waste time. The system had confirmed it. Survivors had been taken hostage by an elite enemy. The rewards were dependent on how many he could rescue alive. A steely resolve settled over him. Turning sharply, Suho called out to Senior Lim. "The strike team's in danger. You need to leave. Now." Lim blinked, confused by Suho's sudden urgency. "What's going on?" he asked, alarmed. "Just trust me. My instincts are screaming." Suho didn't wait. He summoned 2 shadow goblins, commanding them to escort Lim out safely. Lim hesitated. "And what about you?" Suho's voice was calm but firm. "I'm going after them." Realizing the seriousness in Suho's tone, Lim finally nodded. "All right, I'll report this to the Hunter Association and bring reinforcements." Suho gave a grateful nod. Then, removing his protective armor, he summoned Gray. Without delay, Suho slipped on the Vulcan gauntlets. Arcane power surged through him. He looked ready for war. He turned to Beru. "Let's go." Together they raced through the dungeon, each step echoing with urgency. Soon they arrived at a massive door bathed in an eerie green glow. The air was thick with the scent of blood and death. Inside, a nightmare awaited. Corpses littered the stone floor, tossed aside like trash. At the center of the room, the rat-like assassin stood proudly, reporting to his cloaked comrades. "Got more firewood," he said, his tone cruel. One of the other figures, a taller brute, grunted approval. A third, clearly the strategist, nodded in satisfaction. Soon, he said, the dungeon would open fully. Demons would flood through. As a reward, the rat creature was assigned to prepare the bodies for the ritual flames. Though he grumbled, he got to work, dragging the fallen toward the blue fires. The strategist spoke calmly, almost boastfully, explaining their creation. Stardust, a forbidden alchemy made by fusing berserk poison with an awakening stimulant. The process had been taught by an apostle, one who knew how to corrupt souls into monsters. As he spoke, they knew someone was coming. They just didn't expect him so soon. Without warning, the chamber doors exploded inward. The rat creature reacted quickly, slashing the door in half with one clean stroke. His eyes narrowed, locking onto the intruders. Suho and Beru stood at the threshold, ready for battle. But Suho froze. 3 masked beings stood before him. Behind them, hunters, alive, were bound to flaming stakes, their bodies trembling in agony. Suho's breath caught. A system alert confirmed. None of the hostages had perished yet, but there was no time to plan. A blade ripped through the air, aimed straight at his head. Suho arched his back just in time, narrowly dodging a blade aimed straight at his neck. The rat-like monster that launched the strike froze in surprise. Regaining his stance, Suho's intense gaze locked onto the creature as he demanded to know if it was responsible for the dead hunters. With a sudden burst of power, Suho slammed his fist into the rat monster, sending it crashing across the chamber. From the sidelines, the demon leader and his strategist exchanged a knowing glance. The rat beast alone couldn't handle this. Without hesitation, the 2 demons pulled out shimmering pieces of stardust and consumed them, instantly boosting their magical power. While Suho clashed with the rat in close quarters, his instincts flared. Another threat approached. The demon boss surged forward with a massive fist aimed to crush him, but Suho reacted swiftly, flipping backward mid-air to evade the punch. He landed, right into a trap. The middle demon, who had been charging energy, unleashed a bolt of electricity the instant Suho's feet hit the ground. Lightning surged through his body, locking his muscles in agony. Stunned and vulnerable, Suho watched as the rat monster lunged in again, blade drawn and ready to strike. Through gritted teeth, Suho managed to summon his shadow goblins. They burst forth from the darkness with fierce expressions, momentarily throwing the demons into disarray. Seizing the opportunity, Suho grabbed the middle demon by the arm and hurled him across the room. The demon scrambled back to his feet, then exchanged a glance with the boss, his voice low with unease. He recognized this power, the same overwhelming aura that had once decimated their kind. The boss nodded grimly. Yes, it was similar, but not quite as strong as the one from the past, the Shadow Monarch. If they worked together, they could take this one down. With renewed confidence, the trio coordinated their next assault. In a flurry of brutal strikes and synchronized attacks, they swiftly overwhelmed Suho's shadow goblins. Watching his army crumble, fury boiled inside him. Resurrecting them again would be pointless. They simply weren't strong enough. Individually, these demons were no match for Broki, but together, they were a dangerous force. The scene cut briefly to earlier that day. Beru, Suho's loyal shadow ant, had questioned him about why he hadn't revived Broki yet. Having absorbed the remains, Beru could sense fragments of Broki's memories, but Suho had held back. He wasn't ready to summon Broki. Not yet. He'd explained that Broki had died a puppet under Idris's control, and if he was to return as a shadow, Suho needed to be sure it would be an act of honor, not control. He was waiting for Gray's approval. That moment had come. Gray had approached Suho with a soft, understanding smile. Back in the present, Suho gripped the shadow dungeon key tightly. The air grew heavy, the ground trembling as the energy spiraled outward. He called into the void, his voice firm. If Broki still sought vengeance, he would give him that chance. A monstrous shadow stirred, and from it emerged Broki, massive, terrifying, and filled with primal rage. Even in his base form, his presence was overwhelming. His roar echoed through the dungeon like thunder. The three demons froze. The middle one could barely believe what he was seeing. Broki had returned, and standing beside him was the very human who had once bested him. Beru gave a smug nod. With a cold, unyielding stare, Suho raised his hand. Let's end this. He and Broki charged forward, crashing into the trio with explosive force. Their battle rocked the dungeon's foundations. Then suddenly the dungeon's blue glow flickered, turning blood red. A shift had occurred. Everyone felt it. And far in the shadows, a silent figure observed the chaos from afar. A woman, her face hidden beneath her hood, narrowed her eyes at the unfolding scene. Her presence was mysterious, her allegiance unclear. Was she here to help Suho or join the demons? She furrowed her brow, whispering to herself. How did I end up here? A smirk tugged at her lips. Did some idiot summon me as a sacrifice or target practice? Her musing stopped short when her eyes locked onto the battle, a shadow soldier clashing with a demon. Things were definitely getting strange. Meanwhile, Suho engaged the youngest demon in a fierce duel. Blades clashed, sparks flew. Suho's Vulcan gauntlets shimmered as he countered blow after blow with relentless force. Then, finding a brief opening, he drove a crushing kick into the demon's gut, sending him reeling. The demon staggered back, gasping, as if he'd swallowed lava. Suho didn't let up. He moved in for the finishing blow, but a sudden arc of lightning shot between them, forcing him back. The middle demon wasn't just watching, he was protecting his teammate. Suho scoffed inwardly. A family business, huh? The strategist barked commands, warning his younger ally to stay alert. Suho's irritation built. Keeping his connection with Gray active was draining his mana fast. This couldn't go on forever. Even Broki, still far from his full strength, was beginning to struggle against the demon boss. Suho needed to separate them. Then unexpectedly, a woman burst into the middle of the battlefield. All eyes turned as she landed squarely between Suho and the demons. Tell me where Sung Jinwoo is, she demanded, her voice fierce, or prepare to face the consequences. Suho blinked in confusion. Was she looking for his father? He didn't even know who she was. Beru, however, seemed to recognize her instantly. His mandibles twitched as he approached, trying to stay calm. Essel, what are you doing here? The woman's eyes lit up as she saw him. Beru, she cried, running over and scooping the giant ant into a hug like an overjoyed child. You're here too. Why are you so small? Completely oblivious to the battle still raging, she began peppering him with questions. About Jinwoo, about Suho, and who this other human was standing nearby. Beru, barely keeping his composure, sighed. It's a long story. The demons watched the bizarre reunion unfold, utterly baffled. But their strategist quickly recovered, suggesting she might be the perfect candidate for their next Stardust sacrifice. Still, he warned the others, if she knows our enemies, things might get tricky. Essel, however, paid them no mind, thrilled just to see her old friend again. But Beru, ever the pragmatist, cut through the emotion. Essel, we can catch up later. Right now, we're kind of in the middle of a fight. He pointed toward the remaining demons, his tone far too casual. Why don't you help out a little? Essel blinked in confusion. Wait, but the demons weren't about to let her arrival throw off their plan. The middle demon sneered, eyeing her bloodied form. Injured and vulnerable, she was an easy target, and a valuable source of stardust. Without hesitation, he signaled the others forward, clearly eager to strike. But just then, a faint spark flickered in Suho's memory. He muttered to himself, scratching his head. Wait, I think I've seen her somewhere before, but I just can't place it. Noticing how weak she looked, he added internally, can she even fight in that state? Standing beside him, Beru's confidence didn't waver. With a smug tilt of his head, he assured Suho that these low-ranking demons were no match for the woman before them. According to Beru, her name was Essel, eldest daughter of the Radiru household, a noble demon spared by the Shadow Monarch himself during the purge of her world. Her strength, he claimed, was equivalent to an S-rank hunter. The very mention made Suho's eyes light up with excitement. He was about to witness an S-rank demon in action, or so he thought. Before he could finish the thought, the youngest demon lunged. One swift, brutal strike sent Essel flying. Her weapon slipped from her grip, and she skidded across the dirt like a rag doll. The impact silenced everything. Suho and Beru stared, dumbfounded. The energy in the air drained completely. Face down and groaning, Essel slowly began crawling back toward them. She looked like she had barely survived a disaster. Beru, barely masking his irritation, leaned over her. He asked sharply how she had fallen to such a pathetic state. Even her mana levels were disgraceful. Tears welled up in Essel's eyes as she sniffled miserably. She explained that 6 months ago, her household had been destroyed in a rebellion. While escaping, she'd been captured, her blood drained, her powers stolen. Looking up with teary eyes, she asked Beru if he could lend her some of his strength. But Beru didn't even answer. He simply turned his back on her, his disappointment louder than words. Suho sighed. Perfect, he thought bitterly. Now we've got 2 people here with no power. Suddenly, the boss demon laughed coldly from a distance. He had overheard everything. A survivor of the Lateran house? If her blood still carried even a fraction of her former power, consuming it could make them even stronger. Suho groaned. Right back to square one. If he could just isolate the enemies and fight them one-on-one, he knew he could handle it. But the numbers were working against him, until Beru spoke up. With a glint in his eye, Beru raised his hand. Red energy began to swirl around him as he announced he had a plan. A surge of mana pulsed through him. He activated a skill, Harsh Orders, and sent it straight into Essel. Instantly, her stats surged by 50%, but with a heavy side effect, a curse of insanity. Without warning, Essel began foaming at the mouth, eyes glowing with madness. Like a possessed beast, she charged the demons with furious abandon. Suho watched, wide-eyed. She looked absolutely miserable, but if it gave him a chance at cleaner fights, he wasn't going to complain. Capitalizing on the chaos, Suho directed Broki to engage the demon boss, while Essel, driven by her berserk rage, tore into the middle demon. The battle turned chaotic fast. A rat-like demon leapt at Essel, sword raised, aiming to end her rampage. But just as his blade was about to land, Suho dashed in. In one swift motion, he locked the demon into a tight headlock. With a surge of strength, Suho lifted the demon high and hurled him straight into the nearby misborn flames. The demon shrieked in agony, his body igniting. Suho wasn't finished. Seizing the fallen demon's sword, he brought it down in a powerful arc, cleaving the creature in half. A system alert flashed before his eyes. Level up achieved. Another message followed. His Vulcan gauntlets had absorbed the demon's soul, increasing his physical damage by 31%. Power surged through his limbs like lightning. Nearby, Essel was still lost in her berserk state, throwing herself wildly at the middle demon. Though her strikes were uncoordinated, they were relentless, forcing him on the defensive. The demon's eyes widened in horror. His rat companion was dead. Before he could recover, a system message alerted that harsh orders had ended. As the buff faded, Essel collapsed, face first into the dirt. Caught off guard, the demon hesitated. That was his final mistake. Suho appeared behind him like a shadow. In one swift motion, he grabbed the demon and twisted, snapping his neck with a sickening crunch. Another notification, level up, and another demon soul absorbed. Only the boss demon remained. Enraged by the loss of his allies, the demon let out a thunderous roar and struck Broki with a devastating blow, sending the wolf crashing into a dungeon wall. Dust exploded from the impact as the ground trembled under Suho's feet. The boss demon looked around. He was surrounded. Broki to one side, Suho to the other, but his gaze locked onto Essel's unconscious body. She was the key. If he could just consume her blood. Desperation took over. The demon lunged toward her in a mad dash, but Suho intercepted him with a brutal kick. The impact crushed the demon's arm and cracked the stone floor beneath them. The demon stumbled back, howling in pain. Calm and composed, Suho stepped aside, nodding to Broki. "It's your turn now." With a feral snarl, Broki lunged and tore into the boss demon with savage fury. The creature's final screams echoed through the dungeon before falling silent. The battle was over. System notifications flooded Suho's vision. Another level up. And with his progress past level 20, a new feature had unlocked. Store access. Curious, Suho disengaged his bond with Gray and began browsing the store's offerings, eyes lighting up with interest. Moments later, Essel stirred. Groaning, she sat up and rubbed her temples, shooting a glare at Beru. "That ridiculous skill nearly killed me," she snapped. Then, catching sight of Suho, she froze. Her eyes narrowed, suspicious. Another human surrounded by shadow soldiers. She turned to Beru. "Who is this?" Beru, as always, stayed cool. "Perhaps if you'd remained more loyal," he said flatly, "you'd know who could be a worthy successor." Essel's gaze shot back to Suho, and this time it clicked. Her expression changed completely. Tears welled in her eyes as realization struck her like lightning. "He's the young monarch." Suho froze. That name again. Did she just call me? Before he could respond, laughter rang out from Broki and Gray in the background, casually sharing a moment amid the tension. Essel blinked through the tears, whispering, "I didn't recognize you. You've changed so much. You look just like your father." Her voice cracked as she tried to finish her sentence. But before she could say another word, her body gave out. She collapsed. Silence fell over the room once more. Suho's eyes widened in shock as the scene before him registered. His gaze snapped to Beru, his voice sharp with urgency. "Beru, check her condition. Is she all right?" The Ant Commander stepped forward. He knelt beside the unconscious Essel, examining her with a practiced eye. After a moment, he gave a nonchalant shrug. "She's fine," he said, almost dismissively. "Not dead, just drained." Suho exhaled in relief, then turned back toward the group of hunters they had just rescued. Setting his jaw, he looked at Beru again with quiet resolve. "Heal them. I want every one of them to make it out alive." Beru nodded and began tending to the injured. As his healing magic went to work, a soft chime echoed. Suho's system confirmed the quest had been completed. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Mission accomplished. A wave of satisfaction swept over him. He had done it. He had saved them all. Suddenly, another system notification popped up. 3 ability points and a bonus reward, 700 gold. His eyes widened. "Gold," he muttered in disbelief. "They're giving me gold now." Intrigued, Suho opened the system store. It displayed a wide range of items: potions, weapons, tools, everything he might need. A nostalgic grin crept across his face. "Feels like getting pocket money after chores, except this time, it's like Dad rewarding me through the system." His eyes fell back on Essel. She was still unconscious, her face pale. Without hesitating, Suho purchased a basic healing potion from the store, though the description noted it only worked on him. He glanced at Beru. "Should I try it?" But he didn't wait for a reply. Gently tilting the bottle to Essel's lips, he let the potion trickle down. A moment later, her breathing steadied, and a faint flush returned to her cheeks. Beru raised an eyebrow, watching the scene unfold. "Gold for a demon," he muttered under his breath. "Young monarch, your generosity knows no bounds." Suho sighed. already shifting his focus. "We're not leaving her behind," he said firmly. "We'll take her with us to the Shadow Dungeon." Then, turning to Broki, he added, "Bring the demon corpses too. We can't leave evidence of the fight." Without a word, Broki began dragging the mangled bodies while Gray carefully lifted Essel in his arms. Together, the group stepped through the portal. On the other side, as they re-entered the Shadow Dungeon, Suho examined the twisted rat demon sword in his hand. He was lost in thought when Beru's voice broke the silence. "You're not heading back yet." Suho's grip on the weapon tightened. His gaze drifted toward the mistburns, still writhing in pain, their bodies smoldering from the earlier battle. The sight etched itself into his mind. "I can't just leave them like this," he murmured. With swift, silent steps, he moved to each of them, ending their suffering one by one. His voice was low, tinged with regret. "I'm sorry, this is the only mercy I can offer." With the last of them laid to rest, Suho lowered his head and turned away, the weight of what he'd done heavy in his chest. Meanwhile, back at Seoul Station, the mood was anything but calm. The Hunter Association had arrived, and standing at their head was a high-ranking officer with a piercing gaze. "What did you find?" he demanded. One of the junior hunters stepped forward, reporting quickly. "We found bodies. Thorn lizards, misborns. But the wounds on the dead hunter, they don't match any of those monsters. There was also a room completely destroyed, slashed to pieces." The officer narrowed his eyes. So something else was in there. Then he noticed one of the hunters, Lim, trying to slip away. His voice barked out like a whip. "Limit him." The man froze mid-step, turning around with a nervous smile. "You're the one who reported this incident, right? And there was someone with you. Suho, wasn't it? Where is he now?" Lim's expression flickered, but he quickly forced a smile. "Suho. After we got out, he disappeared. Guess he panicked. He's just an E rank after all. Once I realized things were beyond us, I called for backup." The officer studied him for a long, tense moment before placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "You did your part. Good job following protocol." Then turning to his team, he ordered, "Spread out. I don't want anything missed." Lim exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. As he looked up at the sky, his thoughts turned inward. Suho saved us all and chose to stay silent. He felt a deep gratitude he couldn't put into words. Back in the Shadow Dungeon, Suho regrouped with Beru and the others. Essel had regained consciousness and had just been filled in on the current situation. Jinwoo's battle with the outer gods, Suho's awakening, and the ongoing war. She looked stunned. After all this, the Shadow Monarch is still fighting. Beru nodded solemnly. "He never rests. He entrusted me with the task of breaking your seal. But honestly," he added, glancing at Suho with pride, "you didn't even need it. You're already stronger than we expected." Suho turned to Essel, curiosity gleaming in his eyes. "Wait, have we met before?" Her face lit up. "Yes, back during the tutorial your father created for you. Don't you remember?" Suho scratched his head, his memory hazy. But then it clicked. "Wait, you're the one who surrendered the moment you saw me." Beru chuckled. "Couldn't even handle a simple test," he teased. Essel's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She looked away, clearly flustered. But Beru's tone softened as he turned back to her, his expression more serious. "Essel, what happened in the demon realm? How did you end up like this?" Her face darkened. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "After Lord Sung Jinwoo conquered the demon tower, our later household was left in charge. We guarded it faithfully, waiting for the Shadow Monarch to summon us. For a time there was peace." She paused, her hands trembling. "But 6 months ago, everything changed. A substance called Stardust appeared, an enhancer that boosts magical strength. For high-ranking demons, it was nothing. But for the low-ranked, it was everything. It gave them strength, power, and the ambition to rebel." Suho's expression hardened. He remembered the earlier fight. That's what they were using, he realized. Essel's voice grew colder. "They banded together, formed factions, attacked us. At first it was manageable, but then it turned into war. We fought back with everything we had. My family, my entire household, all of us." She took a shuddering breath. "We lost. They destroyed everything. I was the only one who made it out alive, but they drained so much of my blood, I lost my powers. Her voice cracked, tears slipping down her cheek. How can I face the Shadow Monarch now? I failed him. I failed everyone. The room fell silent, her sorrow casting a heavy weight over them. But then, Suho's voice broke the silence, calm and resolute. You did everything you could. Essel looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. You gave everything to protect your people, to uphold my father's will. You fought till the very end. He stepped closer, his voice filled with warmth. If my father were here, he'd be proud. A soft silence followed, broken only by the rustling of wind in the dungeon halls. Essel's trembling stopped, and a spark of strength flickered in her eyes once more. Suho's expression hardened with quiet determination. I'll do everything in my power to help you, he said firmly, his voice steady. We'll restore the later household, bring it back to its rightful place. Essel's eyes welled with tears, this time not from sorrow, but from a renewed hope. Her lips trembled as she offered a faint smile. The household's name, it's Radaru, Essel Radaru, young monarch. Just as that moment of connection settled between them, a system chime suddenly echoed in Suho's ears. A notification appeared before his eyes, drawing his attention. Essel Radaru, last of the pure-blooded demon nobles and descendant of the White Flame, has expressed her gratitude. Suho blinked, stunned. His expression shifted from surprise to disbelief. Essel, the descendant of the White Flame monarch. It was difficult to process. A sly grin slowly tugged at the corner of his mouth. Well, this just got a whole lot more interesting, he muttered under his breath. Without hesitation, he accepted. A sharp gasp from Essel snapped his attention back. She stared at her own system screen in confusion, eyes wide with disbelief. What is this? Suho chuckled. Don't worry. It's the companion system. You're officially part of the team now. Turning to Beru, he raised an eyebrow. So the system shows up for companions too? But it also confirms she truly is the descendant of White Flame. Essel blinked between the two, still lost. White Flame's descendant. Suho smiled but didn't answer her right away. Instead, he stood, stretching slightly. Let's put this new bond skill to the test. He turned to her, his voice calm but firm. The system confirmed the skill activation. In an instant, her entire aura shifted. Essel's violet hair faded into an ethereal white, and her presence transformed. And then, all at once, that energy surged into Suho's fist. He stared in awe. Now that's new. His hand brimmed with energy, hot, heavy, alive. But just as the transfer completed, Essel collapsed to the ground, her hair and form returning to normal. You okay? I'm sorry, Suho, she whispered. That took everything. I can't even stand. Just rest. You did great. Even as he comforted her, Suho's mind buzzed. If it drains her that much, then this skill must be insanely powerful. I can't wait to see what it's really capable of. With his fist still charged, he aimed at the nearest wall and threw a punch with full force, expecting devastation. But when the dust cleared, there was only a small dent. Suho and Beru stared at it, silent. That's it, they both seemed to think in unison. Beru broke the awkward tension first, rubbing his head. Honestly, this doesn't look much different from your regular punch. Suho groaned. Yeah, nowhere near the output I get with Gray. As if on cue, Gray appeared behind him, shooting Essel a smug look. Suho, undeterred, opened the skill description again. And then it clicked. Wait a second, the charge rate is at 0%. He reread the details. Of course. No wonder it didn't work. The skill isn't charged. Frustrated, he scanned the text again, but it gave no clue on how to charge it. Before he could think further, Beru's voice cut in with an eager suggestion. Young monarch, since these demon corpses are just lying around, may I eat them? Suho's face twisted in disgust. Number I'm going to raise them as shadow soldiers. Beru shrugged. Then you'd better hurry. Corpses weaken the longer they stay dead. Suho hesitated, then nodded in reluctant agreement. He extended his hand and focused. Arise. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. A system alert appeared. Extraction failed. Mana corrupted. Shadow conversion impossible. Great, Suho muttered. The demon's mana is too tainted. I can't raise them. Beru nodded thoughtfully. Even the Shadow Monarch couldn't create shadow soldiers from corrupted beings. He used contracts instead, like with the later household. At that mention, Essel flinched. She kept her head low, saying nothing, the pain of her fallen kin still fresh. Suho sighed in frustration. Fine. Beru, go ahead and eat them. Meanwhile, Suho turned back to Essel, crouching beside her and offering a small vial. Here, this should help. Essel blinked, caught off guard. I don't deserve this. I failed you. Suho's voice was gentle. You're being too hard on yourself. We're companions now. You can rely on me a little. He smiled. Besides, I've already prepared a space for you to stay. You can rest here, in the shadow dungeon. Essel's eyes widened in surprise. A space? For me? Before Suho could respond, the system chimed once more. A section of the shadow dungeon has been designated for the descendant of White Flame. Essel, later is now the ruler of her assigned area. But the calm didn't last. Beru suddenly let out a sharp alarm cry. Both Suho and Essel jumped to their feet, alarm rising in their chests. What's wrong? Suho asked, tension in his voice. Beru paused, swallowing hard, his expression grave. I've uncovered something, he said slowly. Something critical. A heavy silence blanketed the area as Suho, Essel, Graysoul, and Broki gathered around Beru. The air was thick with tension. Beru stood with his arms crossed, his gaze intense. I've finished consuming the demons, he began, his voice low and focused. And their memories they revealed far more than I expected. Stardust isn't just spreading through hell, it's already on Earth. The mistburn, they aren't just random mutated creatures, Beru explained. They're not even from this realm. They're alien. That revelation hit like a thunderclap. Suho's mind reeled. This wasn't just a war between realms. It was something bigger, cosmic, interdimensional. And it gets worse, Beru continued grimly, shifting his gaze to Broki. He's connected to this, but not by choice. And neither is the Hyena Guild. They're directly involved. With a flick of his clawed hand, Beru conjured shadowy projections into the air. Distorted images stitched together from the memories he had absorbed. Each scene unraveled a sinister truth. The demons were being supplied with humans, Beru explained, and those humans came from the Hyena Guild. They weren't just kidnapped. They were delivered, processed, turned into misborn. Their bodies mutated, their souls twisted. And then, he paused, letting the weight of it sink in. They were harvested, their essence extracted and refined into stardust. Suho clenched his fists. The more Beru revealed, the more grotesque this conspiracy became. Beru's tone darkened. These operations aren't just happening in hell. There are stardust factories on Earth, multiple ones, hidden in plain sight. A chill spread through the room. These aren't random acts of evil. This is a structured, coordinated system, and it's being orchestrated by more than demons or guilds. Beru's eyes locked onto Suho. The Reaper Guild is involved too. They're transporting the victims, moving them from safe zones straight into the factories. And behind it all, Beru's voice dropped, heavy with warning. Is a human. Not just any human. One who works for the Iterum. Their apostle is already on Earth, hiding among us. But he's not alone, Beru added, his voice growing colder. Another human helps him. Lai Min Sung, the Vice Guild Master of the Reaper Guild. If we follow him, we may uncover the apostle's location. As if on cue, the scene shifted, transitioning to the bustling exterior of the Hunter Association. Reporters crowded the steps, anticipation buzzing as they waited for news. Suddenly, Lee Min-sung emerged from the building. The moment he appeared, questions flew like arrows. What's the Reaper Guild's stance on the Hyena connection? Were you aware of the kidnappings? What do you know about the Seoul Station dungeon? The flurry of questions rattled Min-sung, though he tried to mask his discomfort. Raising a hand, he attempted to pacify the reporters. The Reaper Guild has done everything it can to bring order since the cataclysm 2 years ago, he said, voice trembling slightly. We partnered with the Hyena Guild for their public service efforts. Most of their hunters are D rank, They were efficient. His voice cracked as he mentioned the Seoul station. We used it as a training ground. But in hindsight, that was a mistake. One I deeply regret. Tears welled up. Shoulders shook. He sobbed before the cameras. If only I'd done more, I take full responsibility. The crowd softened. Flashbulbs dimmed. Sympathy replaced skepticism. But the moment he turned away from the cameras, everything changed. His posture straightened. The sorrow vanished. A grin crept across his face. Fools, he muttered under his breath. They bought every word. Hidden nearby in the shadows, Suho observed silently. He whispered, Beru, do you sense any influence from the Iterim on him? Beru concentrated, then shook his head. No, he's not controlled. Not like Broki was. Suho's jaw tightened. Then we'll get the truth another way. Before he could move, Beru grabbed his arm. Don't act recklessly, he warned. You've overcome monsters others couldn't even touch. But this is different. If you charge in blind, you might lose everything. At that moment, Lee Min-sung paused mid-step. His body tensed. His eyes, glowing faintly crimson, scanned the crowd. He tilted his head as if sensing something. Then, dismissive, he turned and walked away. Beru narrowed his eyes, the mana radiating from him. His strength rivals that of an A-rank. The scene shifted to an opulent lounge bathed in warm, ambient lighting. Velvet chairs and marble fixtures radiated extravagance. Lounging in one of the oversized chairs, Vice Guild Master Lee Min-sung reclined with smug satisfaction. The glow of his phone screen lit up his arrogant smirk as he scrolled through the latest headlines. Setting the phone down for a moment. A bit of fake remorse, a few tears, and they lap it up like sheep, he murmured, savoring the adoration being poured on him by the media and the public. But his moment of smug self-indulgence was cut short by the rhythmic sound of heels clicking against polished marble. A woman entered the room, graceful, poised, and commanding attention without uttering a word. Her presence cut through the room like a blade. Her eyes locked onto Min-sung immediately. Her polished smile was pleasant, but her gaze hinted at something sharper beneath the surface. Well, well, she said smoothly, her voice tinged with veiled mockery. What's the hero of the hunter world doing lounging here instead of soaking up the applause? Lai's smirk faded briefly before he caught himself. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing as she strode confidently past the other women seated around him, brushing them aside as if they were irrelevant. Without missing a beat, she sat down beside him and dismissed the others with a casual flick of her hand. Still smiling, she poured a drink for him, her gaze never breaking. A little courtesy wouldn't kill you. Min-sung didn't even look up from his phone. I don't need to report every move I make, he replied coolly. She chuckled softly, masking contempt with a practiced expression of politeness. Inwardly, she sneered. Arrogant fool. Born into power, blind to his own mediocrity. He was once South Korea's rising star, a public darling, until the cataclysm came. After awakening as only an A-rank hunter, Min-sung's pride took a severe blow. Especially when his former driver, Lim Tae-woo, emerged as an S-rank and quickly outshone him. The man he used to command was now one of the most powerful figures in the country, and the very founder of the Reaper Guild. What baffled her was why Min-sung had chosen to join Lim Tae-woo's guild. Pride should have stopped him, yet here he was, basking in borrowed prestige. She leaned in slightly, her voice lowering to a whisper. Shall we talk business now? Min-sung kept his eyes on his phone. What business? Her lips curved into a sly smile. Stardust, she said, her tone smooth as silk. I want to purchase in bulk. That caught his attention. His hand tightened around his glass before he slammed it onto the table, a flicker of frustration surfacing. I've already lost a distributor, he muttered, and a factory. I can't meet demand right now, not at that scale. But the woman's expression didn't change. If anything, her smile deepened. A man of your talents surely has more than one channel, she said sweetly. The vice master of the Reaper Guild must have contingencies, yes. Min-sung studied her for a moment, then leaned back, calculating. Maybe I could apply some pressure, he said finally. My partner's gotten too bold lately. The woman purred in approval, a glint of triumph in her eyes. I knew you wouldn't disappoint. But Min-sung was already lost in thought, irritation simmering beneath the surface. The scene transitioned to a towering high-rise office, its massive windows overlooking the glittering Seoul skyline. Amid the serene city lights stood a lone figure, still, silent, and ominous. His yellow eyes glowed faintly, exuding an unnatural menace that could unsettle even the most seasoned hunter. This wasn't just a man. He was the Apostle of Ithram, the mysterious and dangerous partner behind Lee Min-sung's Stardust operation. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Shadow Dungeon, chaos erupted. Goblins surged forward in waves, their shrieks echoing through the stone corridors. Gray moved like a whisper in the dark, his blade carving effortlessly through the horde. Nearby, Essel held the front line, her spear dancing with precision. Though her movements lacked the raw aggression of Suho's, they were honed, sharper, more disciplined than ever. Her technique had matured. And then there was Sung Suho. With his Vulcan gauntlets faintly glowing, he charged straight into the enemy ranks. Each punch detonated like a cannon blast, ripping through goblins by the dozen. His presence turned the tide, his raw power unstoppable. When the final goblin fell, silence returned to the dungeon. But Suho's expression remained grim. Sweat clung to his brow as he glanced around the battlefield, discontent clouding his eyes. "This still isn't enough," he muttered under his breath. Gripping the summoning horn tightly, he turned to Beru, his voice cold and resolute. He ordered the next wave, without hesitation. Beru, ever observant, watched the young monarch closely. He sensed the growing impatience behind Suho's steady exterior. He remembered the briefing they'd had earlier and understood exactly what weighed on Suho's mind. Earlier that day, the group had gathered in the shadows of the dungeon. Beru stood before them, his presence commanding and voice even as he laid out their mission. Their objective was clear: extract information about the Apostle of Ithram through Lee Min-sung, the man controlling the Stardust supply chain. But contact with Min-sung would not be simple. It would likely end in blood. When Suho asked what would happen if Min-sung refused to talk, Beru's response had been chilling. If the man was beyond redemption, Beru had full permission from the Shadow Monarch to devour him. But only if they could defeat him first. Beru had then assessed the group's capabilities with brutal honesty. Suho, without his bonding skill, barely matched the power of a C-rank hunter. Gray sat at D rank without enhancements. Essel, Beru hesitated to even continue, was barely at C rank herself. Even with Suho's bonding ability boosting him to B rank, they were far from ready. Lee Min-sung was in A rank, and they weren't ready to face him. Essel, voice sharp with emotion, questioned why Beru himself couldn't handle Min-sung. But the Ant Marshal responded firmly. He wasn't to be underestimated, but this wasn't just his fight. Back in the present, a system window flickered before Suho, displaying their progress. The goblin kill count was high, but not nearly high enough. Something wasn't right. The kills were no longer yielding the same rewards. The hidden bonus they'd once received seemed to have disappeared. Curious, Suho opened the rewards tab. Among the loot was a random box. With a flick of his finger, he tapped to open it. Inside was a D-rank item, the Ashen Ring. It offered a small boost, 5 points to his sense stat. Slipping it onto his finger, he immediately noticed the subtle enhancement in his perception. A brief smile tugged at his lips, but it was gone just as fast. It wasn't enough, not even close. His scowl deepened. The goblins offered no real growth anymore. Even his Vulcan gauntlets, once fearsome, had only seen a 3% improvement in damage output. The grind felt stagnant, his path to strength frustratingly slow. "I need to grow stronger," Suho thought bitterly. But how? Later that night, back in his small apartment, Suho sat on his bed, exhausted. His eyes scanned through job postings on his tablet. Mining work, hauling duties, nothing that would make him stronger. No strike squad wanted a low-ranked hunter like him. Worse, he couldn't even enter official dungeons without clearance from the Hunter Association. Beru, who had been silently watching, finally spoke up. "What if you got reevaluated?" Suho sighed, the thought already weighing on him. Reevaluation meant exposure. News articles, headlines, public attention. And in his current state, he couldn't afford that. Not with the Apostle of Ithram potentially watching. His voice was quiet but firm. If the world finds out who I am, I become a target. And right now, I'm not even strong enough to face Lee Min-sung, let alone the Apostle. Beru listened, then responded calmly. If the Apostle is what concerns you, he said, you can rest easy for now. Suho glanced at him, curiosity rising. Why? Beru folded his arms, his voice steady. Because if the Apostle had arrived on Earth before us, they would have already made their move. But they haven't, which means they're biding their time, waiting for something. He explained further. Traveling across dimensions wasn't simple. Even the Shadow Monarch had been weakened by the journey. The more mana one possessed, the harder it was to force through the dimensional tunnel. That's why Ithram couldn't send an army, and why even powerful beings had to act in secret. Suho's eyes narrowed, pieces falling into place. That's why they used Broki and the demon forces, he muttered, to do the dirty work while they stayed hidden. The weight of realization settled over Suho like a storm cloud on the horizon. The Ithram invasion, it was inevitable. But if what Beru had said was true, then time was still on their side. Time to prepare. Time to grow stronger. Suho's eyes hardened with resolve. Watching him closely, Beru, his trusted shadow guardian, recognized the shift. The Shadow Monarch had entrusted Suho to him, not just for protection, but for guidance. And with that trust came a key, both literal and symbolic, a key to the Shadow Dungeon and a hidden lifeline. Beru's thoughts drifted back to that moment. This key will be a lifeline, the Monarch had said. A powerful ally awaits inside, but use it only when the time is right. Just as Beru opened his mouth to reveal this secret, Suho suddenly stood up. His eyes lit up, not with fear, but with excitement. How did I miss this? He muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Beru paused, silently curious about this newfound inspiration. Suho quickly pulled out his phone, his fingers moving in a blur across the screen. Then his lips curved into a grin. I've got it, he said, his earlier frustration vanishing. A way to enter a dungeon, legally, without breaking any of the Hunter Association's rules. The scene shifted. Now Suho sat in a sleek office, modern and imposing, the skyline of Seoul glittering behind him. Across from him sat a sharply dressed man in a custom-tailored suit, exuding power and influence. It was Jinwoo, Suho's uncle and the president of Ajin Software, the company behind the global gaming, Beautiful World. The man leaned back in his chair, studying Suho with a half-amused, half-curious smile. Well, Jinwoo said smoothly, you finally decided to show up. Haven't seen you since your awakening, and now here you are, with a proposal. Suho smiled confidently. I've got an offer you'll want to hear, he said. The office was adorned with posters of Beautiful World, the virtual reality phenomenon that had captivated the globe. Millions logged in daily, and it had reigned supreme for 4 straight years. Earlier that day, Suho had stepped into Agent Software headquarters for the first time. He'd barely walked in when a man approached him. You must be Mr. Sung Suho, the man beamed. Suho blinked, a bit thrown off. He felt like he'd walked into the wrong building, but nodded anyway. Fantastic, the man said, guiding him forward with practiced enthusiasm. The CEO's been expecting you. As Suho walked through the corridors, he noticed something strange. Awakened individuals lounging casually in the halls. Warriors, clearly, but not out in the field. Why were so many powerful hunters working here? Almost as if reading his mind, the guide turned to him with a chuckle. Let me guess, the man said. You're wondering why we've got so many awakened employees, right? Suho gave a cautious nod. The man grinned. Not everyone wants to fight monsters for a living, he said. Some prefer a stable salary and an environment where they won't get their heads bitten off. Can you blame them? Suho couldn't help but agree. Yeah, I guess it beats getting eaten alive. But why would a game company even need hunters? He asked, still trying to piece it together. The man's tone dropped, just slightly. We've got a special project underway. Big stuff. Confidential. Suho's curiosity deepened, but before he could ask more, they arrived. The door to Eugene Jin's office opened with a soft click. Inside, the atmosphere was sleek, professional, and a bit intimidating. Eugene stood to greet his nephew with a wide grin and a clap on the shoulder. Well, well, he said, clearly amused. Eugene chuckled and gestured toward the chair. Busy, huh? That what you told your aunt, too? Suho mumbled something under his breath, guilt flickering in his expression. Eugene leaned back, still smiling. Looks like you've grown up. Even too busy for family now. Despite the teasing, Suho's resolve didn't waver. He had come here with a purpose, and he was ready to play his next card. Suho let out a nervous laugh, his hand instinctively rising to scratch the back of his neck. He smoothly shifted the conversation, pulling out his tablet. I didn't just come to catch up, Uncle. I'm here to talk about something important. Eugene Jin, president of Agensoft and Suho's uncle, raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in his eyes. Straight to business already? We haven't even had a proper chat, and you're diving into shop talk, he chuckled. You really are growing up fast. Suho didn't waste a second. He handed over the tablet. It's all there. I double-checked every detail. It's a proposal you can't lose on. Intrigued, Eugene leaned back in his chair and began scrolling through the data. As he read, his expression gradually shifted from casual interest to genuine curiosity. I was wondering why you suddenly wanted to meet me. A business pitch wasn't what I expected, especially not from you. He smirked, still reading. You're making me feel old here. But his tone changed as he pieced the proposal together. Wait a second, Eugene said, narrowing his gaze. You want me to help you gain access to a dungeon gate? Suho nodded without hesitation. Exactly. With your backing, I can get the clearance I need to enter. I'll form a small team and handle the raid myself. In return, Agensoft gets every magic crystal we collect. I'm confident I can clear D rank and even some low-tier C rank gates. Eugene's smile faded. The weight of an older hunter crept into his expression. Hold on. Did you say a C rank dungeon? He leaned forward, his voice more serious. Suho, you're an E rank awakened. How do you plan on surviving something like that? Before Suho could reply, Eugene pressed further, his voice tinged with disbelief and worry. I'm a D rank myself, and even I wouldn't dare solo a C rank gate. Are you insane? The sharpness in his tone softened, but the concern remained. Is this about your parents? Because if it is, I've already hired professionals. You don't need to put yourself in danger like this. Suho's jaw tightened. He had anticipated this reaction, but a part of him had hoped his uncle might understand. In the back of his mind, Beru's voice echoed telepathically. Are you going to tell him the truth? Suho responded silently. I don't have a choice. He needs to know. With a deep breath, Suho squared his shoulders and met his uncle's gaze. I'm not like the others, he said firmly. I can level up. Eugene blinked, visibly confused. Level up? Like in one of my games, Suho, have you been spending too much time playing Beautiful World? But Suho's eyes didn't waver. His tone grew heavier. I'm serious. There are invaders, creatures from another universe, already here on Earth. They're not just a future threat. They're active. And if I don't grow stronger fast, there won't be anyone left capable of stopping them. A long silence followed. Eugene stared at him, trying to read his expression. Still chuckling, Eugene leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. You know, he said, smirking, what you just described, it sounds exactly like the plot of the new VR game we've been developing. His tone turned more playful, almost teasing. It's about a weak hunter who discovers he can level up independently. Starts out as an E rank, ends up surpassing S rank hunters and saving the world. He laughed again, amused by the eerie coincidence. Then with a mischievous glint in his eye, he added, I was trying to keep that storyline under wraps a bit longer, but I guess you figured it out all on your own. Meanwhile, Suho's thoughts churned beneath his calm exterior. The conversation, the setting, even the tone, it all felt eerily familiar. It mirrored his father's story far too closely. What began as curiosity was now morphing into a quiet unease. Across from him, Eugene, still oblivious to Suho's inner turmoil, leaned back with a smirk, eyes closed in mock drama. If this was a prank, kid, I've got bad news, he said with a laugh. You failed. You're still too green to outwit your old uncle. But before the words could even settle in the room, another voice rang out. Calm, commanding, and utterly inhuman. Failed, not even close. The voice sent a shiver down Eugene's spine. His eyes snapped open, and all traces of amusement vanished. He scanned the room wildly and then froze. A towering, ant-like being had materialized from the shadows, its very presence warping the air around it. Eugene stumbled back in his chair, pale and wide-eyed. What is that thing? The creature Beru stood tall and composed, unbothered by the alarm he'd caused. Turning to Suho, his tone was respectful. Shall I take it from here, young monarch? Suho gave a silent nod, and Beru turned his focus to Eugene. His voice grew solemn. Your lost memories, they were sealed long ago. Fragments of a life you shared with the Shadow Monarch. You weren't just anyone. You were one of his closest comrades, a warrior who fought countless battles at his side. Beru paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. That story you thought you created, the one your company is developing, it's not fiction. It's a faint echo of a past your soul remembers, even if your mind does not. Eugene stared, stunned into silence. His confusion was written across his face. To bridge the gap between disbelief and truth, Beru raised his clawed hand. A glowing, otherworldly key materialized in his grasp, pulsing with an ominous light. This, he said, holding it aloft, is a gift from the Shadow Monarch. Without warning, Beru stepped forward and pressed the key to Eugene's chest. In a flash of shadowy light, everything around him vanished. Eugene found himself in a boundless void, an endless realm of darkness and silence. He spun in confusion, trying to grasp what had just happened. And then from the swirling abyss, a figure began to take shape. It was him, a younger version of himself, full of vitality and ambition. And with it, the memories came crashing back. He remembered standing beside Jinwoo, his brother in arms. They had cleared dungeons together, bled together, celebrated victories, and mourned losses. He saw the moment they first met, the hard-earned camaraderie forged in battle, and one quiet night where he had raised a glass and said, "You've been more of a brother to me than my real brothers ever were." Jinwoo had smiled, replying simply, "Then from this day forward, we're brothers." The void faded. The present came rushing back. Eugene was once again in his office, tears streaming down his cheeks as the weight of his recovered past collapsed onto him. He buried his face in trembling hands, overwhelmed by the flood of emotion. Suho watched in silence, concern etched across his face. "What did you do to him?" he asked quietly, his voice tinged with both confusion and worry. Beru remained calm, speaking gently. "There's no need for alarm. I merely returned what was lost, his memories from the previous world." Eugene sat motionless, his body still shaking. Slowly, he wiped his eyes and took a deep, grounding breath. When he looked up at Suho again, the light in his eyes had changed. He understood now. "So you really can level up," he said softly, "just like your father. No limits, right?" Suho nodded but added quickly, "It's a bit different for me." Eugene leaned back, his thoughts clearly drifting to memories long buried. "Jinwoo," he murmured inwardly, "you're still out there, protecting us from things we can't even imagine. Still putting others first, just like always." He sighed heavily, a bitter smile tugging at the edge of his mouth. "So it really is that serious, huh? And instead of begging for help, you came to me with a proposal, just like your father would have done." Suho chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, you know how it is." Eugene looked at him with new eyes now, not as a kid, but as someone who carried a legacy. "You've inherited your father's will. You can stand on your own." With a deep sigh of resolve, Eugene made his decision. "All right, you have my support. I'll help you get what you need." Suho's face lit up with pure joy. He jumped from his seat, practically shouting, "Really?" It was the moment he had hoped for, and now it was finally happening. As Suho celebrated, Eugene leaned back once more. But this time his smile had faded. A shadow lingered in his heart. Jinwoo is still out there, fighting alone in silence, his hands clenched. But maybe I can finally do something for him, just like he always did for me. With that silent vow, Eugene committed himself to Suho's mission, not just for Earth, but for his brother, the Shadow Monarch Sung Jinwoo. The scene shifted to the entrance of a dimly lit dungeon. Standing at its edge was Suho, his face partially obscured by a shadowy mask to conceal his identity. Around him loitered a handful of individuals, temporary hires arranged by his uncle Jinho, just to meet the minimum headcount required for dungeon entry. Suho gave them a brief glance, a flicker of gratitude passing through his chest. His uncle may have used his own methods, but in the end, he still had Suho's back. As Suho approached the shimmering gate, a frail man seated on a nearby bench called out to him, his tone skeptical. "Hey, kid, you're really going to pay me 4,000,000 won just to sit here and do nothing?" Suho offered a small, reassuring smile and nodded. "That's right. Just sit tight and relax." The man raised a doubtful eyebrow. "And you're going in there alone. Listen, I don't know how confident you are, but these gates hide horrors you can't even begin to imagine. Be careful." Suho gave a polite nod, his voice calm and steady. "Thanks for the advice. If things get dicey, I'll be sure to ask for help." With that, he turned away and walked toward the gate, his steps firm, his resolve unshaken. As the magical veil of the dungeon swallowed him whole, Suho's thoughts drifted to his father. Dad carried the weight of countless lives on his shoulders, all alone. But I'm not him. I'm not alone. That's why I have my team. With a single mental command, two figures appeared at his side, Essel and Gray, both fully materialized and ready for battle. As the dungeon's true horrors revealed themselves, a horde of grotesque monsters stretched out before them, their twisted forms blocking the path forward. Suho tightened the straps of his Vulcan gauntlets, his eyes locked on the enemy ahead. No hesitation, no fear, just focus. Raising his voice with unwavering confidence, he gave a single command. "Let's level up." That's the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. See you next time.